teacher education, commerce, admin and management, policing, and more. Mid-year applications are now open. Visit stadio.ac.za and register today. Stadio, a new vision in higher education.
And we would buy 500 cars, and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price, and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Do you remember the cool times of Sports Buzz?
Coming up on Sports
Buzz used to be the go-to young people sports show in Mzansi, Africa. The multi-sport award-winning youth magazine show. A great platform that profiled young athletes and teams. The glory days of Sports Buzz are back in a newly revamped youth sports show with a wow vibe. Goats like us. Yeah, goats. Greatest of all time. Experience youth excellence in sport, profiling of active athletes and teams, latest news in the world of youth sport, the active voice of school sports, and promoting a healthy lifestyle among the youth. Do not miss out on Goats Like Us. Your front row seat awaits you every Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag Goats, greatest of all time. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
And there we are. Let's get talking. So much to talk about. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the National Pulse. My name is Ashraf Garda. Wonderful that you're part of it wherever you are in the country. Tell me where you are. As always, love to know. Give yourself a shout out so that we can give you a shout out. You can do that probably ideally via WhatsApp, text or voice note. Text, in fact, better. With pictures, 0614 104 107. And if you are on social media, tweet out. Many people do that every single day. Facebook, Twitter or X. Use that hashtag, the National Pulse. And I wonder what for you moves the National Pulse today. Well, certainly one of the issues we will talk about is that issue about Ronaldo. Of course, maybe 2-3 different angles to that. And if there's any developing stories around the political discussions and negotiations that are ongoing, we'll talk about that. No time or date as yet for the announcement of a new cabinet. Maybe it's today. Who knows? Maybe tomorrow. I don't know. But we will certainly talk about that, and there's more as well, including the issues of initiation season and then that ongoing war in the Sudan. What needs to be happening to stop that war? Now, as always, you can connect with me any time, right? But let's get moving with the That's My Point feature. So, I was yesterday, in fact, on my way home from studios, I'm driving and I see behind me, or two cars behind me, there's a guy flashing and he's in this tow truck. But even as he flashes, there's an absolute emergency about his flashing. And remember, that's a tow truck, not an ambulance, right? And then he overtakes me and he overtakes the other guy too. And then on the bend, he turns right on the right-hand side as he turns right, meaning he's on the wrong side of the road. And at that stage, I already told myself, you know what? If somebody was coming up on the left side, as they should, that's an accident, okay? Anyway, the tow truck then continues at real pace, and then we get a bend in the road, like a blind bend, and you can't see what's on the other side. And again, he effectively takes the bend on the right-hand side. And I know why, because obviously he's chasing, he's got wind, there's an accident. And you know how the tow trucks work. They get wind about it, and whoever gets there first, they get the business of towing the car away. But here's the thing I want to raise. In terms of them chasing their business or the business, remember, it's not an emergency any longer, because that would be the hospital, that will be the ambulance issue, right? These guys, in an effort to get the business and effectively provide a service, are effectively doing such a disservice to the public in terms of potentially causing another accident. And it's not just once I've seen it over and over and over again. And honestly, that can't be allowed to continue, can it? I wonder what you make of it. Are there examples of the tow truck scenario on the wrong side of the road, breaking the speed limit, doing whatever they have to do? Or are there other examples of a service that's for good, but in an effort to do good, the person or the people effectively break the law in providing that good service? Well, that's my point. What's yours?
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Well, do share your experiences if you've also experienced what I have around tow trucks, and perhaps maybe you're the tow truck driver. Look, why are you happy to break the law and the rules of the road and put everybody, including yourself, at absolute risk as you go and help somebody else who's been in an accident simply to try and tow their car away? Right. Not only that, anything else you want to get off your chest, feel free to share your views and your point, right? 086 000 2032. As always, the National Pulse hectic show, lots to cover. Probably one of the biggest stories for now is the issue of Ronaldo Gous, right? That's the DAMP, and I wonder whether anybody's been in that short period of being an MP. Friday it was, right? And he's effectively suspended. You know that now. The DA suspended him for the alleged racial utterances relating to various video posts that were posted online, and he now will follow an investigation or a disciplinary hearing from the DA Federal Council itself. Okay, but the South African Human Rights Commission themselves are today, they've either done or they intend to institute proceedings at the Equality Court in Gqeberha against Ronaldo Gous. So let's find out more about that in terms of what their position is. Dr. Eileen Carter is with me, the provincial manager for the South African Human Rights Commission in the Eastern Cape region. Dr. Carter, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Afternoon, Ashraf. Afternoon to your listeners.
Thank you. Do I take it this issue when it surfaced a couple of days ago and then even more so overnight about further utterances and like really, really abusive language certainly got your pulse rate and the blood boiling?
Absolutely, and that is exactly why we have already, Ashraf, instituted proceedings in the Equality Court in Gqeberha, the High Court sitting as the Equality Court. So our papers have been filed with the court this morning. Okay.
On what basis you're filing papers, or you have filed? On what basis? What are you saying?
So in terms of the Equality Act and PAPUDA, the Human Rights Commission is enjoined to follow proceedings and institute proceedings when it has noted prima facie violations or prima facie evidence of hate speech and harassment based on race. Now, following the latest online footage that Mr. Gous was seen making utterances in a disparaging nature, we then decided we will be instituting based on the Section 10 and Section 11 of the Equality Act, and we have done so.
And what does that say in terms of those two sections?
So we're saying what the utterances, and in fact, Ashraf, it is tried already in South African law that the words that the respondent in this case allegedly has been using are deemed hate speech and harassment. So what we are asking the court is to make that pronouncement again, but we are also asking the court for further relief against the respondent in view of the seriousness of the matter.
And in terms of that relief, I mean, what would you be asking for? What is the demand?
So what we are asking, number one, for the court is that in terms of the Equality Act and within the context of publishing harmful content online, that we want the court to say that the cause of action arises when the harmful content is accessed and read and the harm is felt. So you would note that these utterances allegedly were made about 10 years ago. This is one of the points of relief that we are asking the court for. But in addition, we want an apology, of course, a written apology to South Africans, and we also are asking for damages to be paid to a non-profit organization working towards social cohesion. In addition, Ashraf, we are also asking for community service, and the Commission is also asking that the respondent participate in a diversity and inclusivity workshop, as well as anything else that the court feels is alternative for further relief.
I mean, let's stay with that last part, the diversity and inclusivity workshop. I mean, it's quite amazing that someone even if he said it 10 years ago, is now effectively an MP. He's a member of parliament. He represents you and I in parliament. And there's one thing, being stereotypically racist, which, we all may be prone to that. There's another thing using, the K word and the N word and using the word kill in between all of that, which is incredible. If you think about, that's the type of belief and the belief system this person has, and then the person goes out and represents a party and effectively now represents an entire country in parliament. What does that say then in terms of the type of considerations you've just made about there needs to be greater consciousness and awareness around what is right and what is wrong?
So I think what our position is, and what we've also said in our papers, is there might be an incompatibility with the oath of office that was undertaken last week. So we are asking the court to also apply itself in this respect, because as a member of parliament, or as a previous member of parliament perhaps, the respondent is and will be expected to set an example for all South Africans by adhering to the highest standards of conduct. And this is what we are saying as the Human Rights Commission. We are an institution supporting democracy, and constitutional democracy is the begin all and end all for us as an institution, also following through on our Chapter 9 obligations. So, it's a matter that we felt was quite urgent to be dealt with, and that's why overnight we decided to institute, and we have done so.
I mean, it does say, in terms of exactly where you stand at the Human Rights Commission, that we had apartheid, then we had democracy, then we had the TRC, and whereas often the TRC was full of high-profile people that provided testimony, that there's never been a nationwide TRC in terms of the impact of apartheid on all of us, even those who benefited from apartheid. It impacted every one of us, right? And is there time for that, where there has to be this nationwide counseling on the issues of race and racism and stereotypes and what we say and what we can't say?
No, I think it's an absolute valid point that you're making, and that is why we are also speaking about, diversity and inclusivity workshops, dialogues that we as South Africans need to have, because certainly as a nation we need to be able to work towards social cohesion. That's also one of the reasons the Commission undertook a few years ago our SHINE initiative, where we really need to have these tough conversations with each other. But as the Commission, ours is also to promote human rights observance and realization. And as part of our advocacy program, that is what we are trying to do.
In terms of the diversity and inclusivity, I mean, so, I understand that your request would be for Ronaldo Host in one instant, and that effectively is a suggestion after the event. In terms of diversity and inclusivity before the event, does that happen in schools? Because, I mean, that would fit squarely in terms of how we then manifest our human rights understanding in our country, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I think as part of our focus areas, we are also speaking to, the education facilities to include baseline training on the Constitution, on social cohesion, and to have it included almost in the code of conduct to popularize these discussions right from an early age, because our children are absolutely our future, not to sound cliched, but we need to then embark on mainstreaming these discussions at that level to ensure that, social cohesion is definitely our end goal here.
Just lastly, your thoughts on the DA, the Democratic Alliance, in terms of up to now. I know they've taken action, they've suspended the person, but up to now, the fact that he's, let's call it, slipped through the net to get to where he is now. What would you say about that?
The actions that they have undertaken, I would like to rather reflect on what the Commission is doing in terms of social media awareness. We do have a social media charter exactly for this purpose, to warn users against harmful content online, and also to tell the members of the public who are active on social media and online in general to say, you have to be responsible and you have to act within the confines of the law, because you will be held accountable if you do transgress the Equality Act and the general principles of the Constitution online as well.
Well, let's leave it at that. Dr. Eileen Carter, Provincial Manager for the South African Human Rights Commission based in the Eastern Cape. Much appreciate your time, and we certainly will follow what comes out of what you've done today in terms of instituting proceedings. That's your thought. That's the DA's side as well. And we will perhaps talk to a diversity expert coming up after 5. That really would be the plan. But certainly from a listener point of view, well, what's your thoughts on this issue? What's your point? Give me a call right away, 086 000 2032, because that clearly is an issue that moves the national pulse, isn't it? If you want to WhatsApp, you have the option of text or voice notes, 0614 104 107. One is, what do you feel about it? B, what's the big picture in terms of how do we get this right so we don't have to have this type of conversation ever again? I'm being very optimistic. More on the National Pulse in a moment.
Municipal services play a vital role in keeping our city safe, clean, and functional. By paying for municipal services like your water bill, you're investing in the future of the City of Johannesburg's water supply. Paying for your services is not just a transaction, but a commitment to the sustainability of your community. Let's continue to pave the way for a brighter tomorrow, one payment at a time. Brought to you by Johannesburg Water, a water utility that cares.
Lights, camera, scalpel. Every second counts, and every cut, every thought, every action is critical. Critical. Mondays to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 11 June. Channel your best drama with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Okay, I'll tell you what, here's some really good news before I get to Colin in Cape Town. If you are between the ages of 18 to 35, there's a chance for you as part of the SAFM Youth Month takeover. You could join in, you could join me, in fact, next week sometime, and all my other colleagues, all my other chummies on air, different shows from Stephen all the way down throughout the day, right? What you need to be doing is WhatsApp voice note us, 0614 104 107, you know that one, or email info@safm.coza. So basically you've got to pitch why you'd like to co-host a show, and then tell us your whole story and 2 compelling issues facing South Africa's 30 years of democracy. But really make your pitch so that you will stand out and we'll say, hey, we need to have this person in studio. Remember, it's 4 shows for the day, for 2 days running. So there's a chance you could be on one of those shows. Perhaps if you like, maybe just give out your preference in terms of which show you'd like to be on as well. Here's a question, Ashraf. Does your guest have a view on doing away with racial profiling and just calling us all South Africans? Okay, I didn't get to that, but I must tell you, it's very difficult. It's an ideal situation. It's very difficult when there are responses that are still very, very based on race. And we know, let's be fair, affirmative action is a leveling off in terms of the deficit we've had, which was based on race. So until we get to that level, sometime down the line, like it or not, race is going to matter, isn't it? The issues of Sudan certainly matters. Let's talk about that as part of our Global Watch feature. So famine looming in parts of Sudan, and it's been affected by violence that ensured since it's about a year now, since April of last year. Humanitarian organizations say more assistance is needed. There are more than 50,000 people in hunger hotspots across South Darfur. Well, here's the question. Is there a political will to resolve the ongoing war in Sudan? And let's not confuse. You've got Sudan, you've got South Sudan, which is recently independent, right? Let's find out more about it with Ibrahim Dean. He was an independent political researcher. Ibrahim, appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Thanks for having me, Ashraf.
Thank you. Perhaps you can answer this question first up. So is there a political will to end the ongoing war in the Sudan?
I think there's a political will from some sides. However, neighboring countries, regional countries benefit from the conflict. So your United Arab Emirates, your Russia, which is a smuggling goal, your Chad to an extent, all of them are benefiting from the conflict, and that's why still arming and resupplying the 2 belligerents, and that's meaning that the conflict is enduring. Peace talks have come to a halt, and we're seeing the UN talks about 13,000 killed and 33,000 injured. Some estimates put it as high as 150,000 killed. And the risk of genocide, famine is looming, as you said. 2.5 million people are at risk of starvation.
So
in the imminent.
All right. So you're saying that some countries benefit from the ongoing conflict because they've sell arms to them. Are there countries that are very clear about wanting to put a stop to the conflict, and they've been very public about it?
So it seems as if the one country that wants to stop has good relations with both of the belligerents is Saudi Arabia. And the Troika, which is basically US, Norway, your UN. Wanting to stop the conflict, talking about reimposing or re-implementing a peace force in the area, peacekeeping force, which was there until February this year. However, your Emiratis, one fear of political Islam, but also, they're benefiting from from the gold, which is, going through the UAE before it gets smuggled to Russia. Russia, all of these countries are, continue or have this interest in actually a continuation in the conflict. And, because the conflict is not on the front burner in a sense, been superseded or in the background of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the current, genocide that's happening in Gaza, there's very little focus on the conflict, and this is allowing this to continue. And it's very likely that in Sudan, just like in Gaza, there's genocide occurring.
And what's your understanding of the conflict? I mean, who's the conflict between? What are they fighting over?
So, initially it started off as a power struggle between two generals. At the end of the day, the people lose out in this conflict. There was a revolution just a few years ago, bringing much hope, but, the military then was able to instrumentalize the protest movement. And, in April last year, two generals, there was a power struggle between the two generals, but, this has then since calcified into a conflict that now has ethnic and regional dimensions, and that, initially a power sharing agreement would have just sorted out the conflict. It's now reached a situation where there needs to be some fundamental change for the conflict to stop, and post-conflict, the scars are going to last in the decades.
You mentioned Saudi Arabia and other countries. Unless I've heard it wrong, you haven't mentioned the African Union and neighboring African countries. Where do they fit in all this?
So the African Union has been trying to play a part in the Sudanese conflict, looking or actually sponsoring mediation negotiations. However, at the end of the day, the African Union, at a power level and influence level, has been superseded by your United Arab Emirates, your Turkey, your Russia, your Saudi Arabia, and that's why it has had to have, be in the background. But in terms of regional countries, your Ethiopia, your Chad have been home now to millions of Sudanese refugees, and there's also then exacerbating in the past weeks internal conflicts within these countries, over access to land. Many of these countries, your Chad, for example, especially the bordering region, is also suffering drought. And so, the regional impacts of the Sudanese conflict are being felt. But because Sudan, is so strategically located, the Gulf states with the more influence, more power, more money, have actually, in a sense, superseded the role of the African Union.
But it's, I find it quite bizarre even you saying that in fact the AU's influence is superseded by the United Arab Emirates, for example. Like, why could that ever be the case?
Unfortunately, when it comes to the African Union, one is, it has issued statements and declarations, but, there needs to be enforcement. And unfortunately, there's no enforcement body. We've just seen, even within, Niger, ECOWAS was very strong in issuing statements, but couldn't do anything to reverse the coup. Similarly, we're having these situations in Sudan, where the interest is high, where, actors such as your United Arab Emirates have a lot to lose. They have not spared any effort in supplying and actually trying to impose their will, on the conflict itself. And, unfortunately, in that sense, it's likely that the Troika, the US, Norway, and UN, would have more influence. But because Sudan, is on the back burner, there's very little public pressure. And, when the British diplomats actually tried to question the Emiratis, they were actually snubbed. And so there needs to be a lot more monitoring mechanisms, but also sanctions for free riders.
All right, quick answer. We're on to news time. What is South Africa doing?
So, President Ramaphosa did have Hamid early this year to try and spearhead a negotiations-based process. However, until the regional powers feel that it's in their interest to halt the conflict, they continue to resupply, and until the two belligerents feel that there's no longer a military solution. There's very little, in a sense, incentive for them to sit on the table. And,
okay.
That needs to be created.
Thank you for your time, Ibrahim Deen. Really worrisome conversation around the Sudan, right? Ibrahim Deen is an independent political researcher. What do you make of the problems of Sudan and this ongoing war and like no stop to all of that? Give me a shout on that. I certainly want to get your thoughts too. Let's get the news headlines. It's just gone 3:30. Here's Madupi.
Afternoon in your headlines, 4 rhino poachers have been shot and killed in 2 separate incidents in the Kruger National Park in Limpopo. The newly appointed members of the executive committee in Limpopo have arrived at the Ranch Hotel in Polokwane, where they are expected to be sworn in this afternoon. And the Human Rights Commission says it has filed papers in the Equality Court against the suspended DA MP, Ronaldo Khosa. A full news update coming up at 4.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, Main Road in Magaliesig has delays between Loneal Boulevard and Witkoppen Road. The N1 southbound in Midrand has a crash before Olifantsfontein Road, and Eskom Patleli Drive in Pretoria is queuing at Mabopane Highway. In KZN, the N3 eastbound has a stationary truck reported at Ashburton. The N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction, and the N3 westbound has a crash reported after Cliffdale exit. In Cape Town, Chapman's Peak Drive is closed due to rockfalls. Voortrekker Road outbound is slow moving through Maitland. Robert Zubuki Road southbound has a stationary truck reported at the N2 highway, and Marine Drive northbound is queuing at Luxton Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Right, to me, Minister of Sports, no cabinet reshuffle for you, I can assure you of that, right?
Yeah.
What's your big story? Rugby, right? Yeah.
Rugby. Yeah. And the tickets for the much anticipated clash between world champion Springboks and New Zealand at Cape Town Stadium in September is officially sold out. The Boks will host the All Blacks in the Rugby Championship on the 31st of August at Ellis Park before a 7th September blockbuster in Cape Town in a rematch of the 2023 Rugby World Cup final. Rassie Rasmus's Chargers kick off their 2024 season against Wales at Twickenham on Saturday. Then the Comrades Association is currently investigating allegations of cheating at the marathon. According to a statement that's sent out today, their office received tip-offs of suspected cheating during the race and also regarding the submission of fraudulent qualifying information. Now, no athletes have been identified as yet, but race and operations manager Anne Ashworth says that CMA is hoping to conclude the investigations in the next few days, after which the names will be handed over to the KZN Athletics for disciplinary action. Then in football, CAF head of communication Lux September says that they are set to announce the dates for the men's and women's Africa Cup of Nations tournament on Friday. September says that the football calendar will feature strongly on the agenda items for the meeting that they will have on Friday, and the usual July-August period has been taken this year by the Olympic Games in Paris. Then elsewhere, Serbia have threatened to quit the Euros. That's if UEFA doesn't punish Croatia and Albania for shouting vile chants at the tournament. Now, during their Group B games, supporters could be heard singing "Kill the Serbs." Albania, on the other hand, have already received one fine for a separate display during their 2-1 loss to Italy. Then in cricket, Phil Salt thrashed a brilliant 87 not out of just 47 balls as defending champions England claimed an 8-wicket win over the West Indies in the T20 World Cup Super 8. Salt smashed 7 fours and 5 sixes, while Johnny Bairstow hit an unbeaten 48 as England finished on 181 for 2 of 17 overs after earlier restricting the West Indies to 108 for 4. Anything's off with women in sports. Yvette van Zyl says that she's eyeing a top 5 finish at the upcoming Spa Women's Race that's happening in Durban on Sunday. She's still recovering from the National Half Marathon Championships, where she got 9th place finish, and she's also using this 10 kilometer as part of her preparations for the Olympic Games. So wishing her all the best. With that said, it is a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour for SFM Sport. I am Domingo.
So when you said that the tickets, and this is how you said it, tickets for the much-awaited clash between the Springboks and the All Blacks, I thought, tickets are open. You said, they're sold out already.
Officially sold out, the ones for the match in Cape Town.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, if you're planning on watching that match and you haven't bought tickets as yet and you're from Cape Town, you're going to have to sit down and watch it on your screen.
Well, look,
home.
leaving aside the issue of the price and what have you, let's do agree on one thing.
Yeah.
A Springboks All Blacks rivalry is amongst the great rivalries in world sport.
There's history there.
Yeah. So Cape Town, if you want me to come and talk about it, I'll be happy to come. Tickets are sold out. Any other way we can get in, Tumi wants to come with as well. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Right, more sport in an hour. Yeah.
Alrighty.
Water infrastructure vandalism has costly and usually dangerous consequences. Stealing of manhole covers leads to the death of children. Every broken pipe or vandalized pump doesn't just cost money, but it also threatens our access to clean water, disrupts service delivery, and endangers public health and safety. Help us in the fight against water infrastructure vandalism by reporting any suspicious activity to the City of Johannesburg on 0800 002 587. Your vigilance can prevent a death or disaster. This message is brought to you by Johannesburg Water, a water utility that cares.
Think bigger than just a banking partner. Think a team of specialized experts supporting you to make better financial decisions to enable your growth aspirations. Think a strategic partnership providing indispensable advice to help you make the right moves. Think bigger. Think Nedbank Commercial Banking. For more information, visit nedbank.co.za. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider.
Now you can get private banking levels of service from Auto & General. They've just launched their private advisory service, and if you have more than a car to insure and your combined cover is valued at more than 1 million rand, you qualify. To celebrate, they're giving you the chance to win in the Auto & General Combine and Qualify competition. Visit safm.co.za, complete the entry form, and we could be calling you live on air. You'll be presented with various scenarios of insurable items. If you combine the correct two that meet the qualifying criteria for a private advisor, you'll win 5,000 Rand. Plus, if you get an obligation-free insurance quote from Auto & General, you'll get an extra 1,000 Rand. Visit safm.co.za and enter now. Auto & General is a licensed non-life insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation.
Right, listen to this, right? 37-year-old Tebogo. Well, he's got a really great deal on his car insurance premium from Outsurance. He pays an amazing 762 rands per month to insure his white 2018 Ford Figo Ambiente. Well, now that he's got it insured, here's the question. He now has extra cash for every month, that is, to go out for a meal with his friends, chommies. Get an Outsurance quote today. SMS OUT. That's OUT to 30754. That's OUT to 30754. License, insurer, and FSP. T's and C's online apply.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, let's get your thoughts. What, for you, moves the national pulse today? I can think of many things, but Ronaldo Gous, it's certainly up there. Mandla has the thought. I think it's Colin, firstly, in fact. Colin, hi.
Hi there, Ashraf.
Yeah, good talking to you, Colin. Go ahead.
I condemn this Gous bloke, but yeah, to me he's an idiot. But anyway, human rights. You know, they do sometimes good things and sometimes they don't even care, but very important things. Now, what I wanted to say is, I condemn completely what Gous did and anybody else that does it. But the fact remains is the human rights came straight to my mind when Malema and his crew sing, kill the boer, kill the farmer, the human rights, that's not hate speech. So where does one draw the line? Is it because he's a white guy and not a black guy? You know what I mean?
But I don't know what you mean. I'll tell you why. That issue was taken to the Human Rights Commission. That issue went to the highest courts, and there's a way of interpreting that. And they ruled against your thoughts.
Against that, yes.
Yeah, so
that's what I'm saying. That is what I'm saying. That is pure. Even black people phoned on the radio and condemned Malema. They condemned him. But somehow the court does not find that is hate speech. You see?
Okay.
Some people get away with it and some don't. But now, I wonder if the shoe was on the other foot, would the human rights be so quick to take action?
Okay.
There are certain things I've heard politicians say and do has never even went to the human rights. So we've got to be, we got to get this racism out of this country. If we're going to treat everybody the same, whether you're a politician, whether you are this or that.
Okay.
Racism
Colin,
is not here. Racism
Colin,
does not belong here.
Got your point. I'm sure many people have views on all the things you've said, the pro and the against, and I welcome comments on that, absolutely. Right, give me your thoughts on how you think that plays out, the Ronaldo Ho story. 086002032, and what about that point about, going for diversity and inclusion, whether they call it training or therapy? How important is that, not just for him, but certainly for all people in South Africa? And I'm using the word all people in South Africa. WhatsApp, text or voice notes also welcome. 0614 104 107. 0614 104 107. Right, by the way, lots more to consider on some of the big issues we talk about, and feel free from your side to deliver some suggestions in terms of the issues that you think you need to be covering, right? We'll pick up on that in a moment. We should be chatting about the initiation season as well. That's particularly important, right? But let's get to that in just a moment. We'll do it right after this.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. The National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Well, there's a WhatsApp text saying, hello, good show. Thank you so much. But give me your name so I can give you a shout out as well. Really appreciate that feedback, okay? Let's get on to something else just as important. So police in the KwaZulu-Natal region are up in arms demanding the overtime pay owed to them after this year's, national and provincial elections. It's widely reported that members are complaining about the discrepancy in the payment received versus the hours worked. What do? Take them to court? I'm just thinking, it's just bizarre. We're going to find out more. Richard Mamabolo is the spokesperson for the Police and Prisons Civil Rights Union. That, of course, is POPCRU. Richard, good chatting to you live on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon to you and the listeners.
Thank you. Right, so what is the story? I mean, I understand if you're saying there's a discrepancy, what is the discrepancy?
Okay, just to give you a background, on the 24th of May, we had a meeting with the SAPS management where we agreed about the deployment on the elections, which was declared as a special event by the National Commissioner. This is obviously in terms of an agreement, which is replaced the Agreement 2 of 2014. Now, we further also agreed that the call-up instruction will work on a 12-hour basis, so there would be 2 12-hour shifts resulting in 24 hours, and that whenever that the work, overtime work is conducted over the 12 hours that is stipulated, then these workers would be paid in terms of the normal overtime policy, which is in line with another agreement again of 2014. Now, The challenge that we have currently is that members have only been paid for the 12 hours worked, yet you've got instances where members had to work over that time, between 24 to 36 hours. And this is not only KZN matter. There are also reports coming from the Eastern Cape wherein we've got similar concerns that the management within those provinces have not paid those members according to what has been agreed. Now, our structures in the province of KZN yesterday had a meeting with the management, and they said they were obviously looking into the numbers and the statistics and would, of course, ensure that the members are paid. So we hope it's something that can be resolved soon, but they also indicated a shortage of funds. And this, of course, goes against the background that as and when these agreements were made on the 24th of May, there was an agreement that there would be allocation of funds depending on the number of police officers, which we had agreed that they need to obviously be on the ground. So it's something that is developing, and we're expecting different reports from other provinces who might face similar challenges.
So who's not paying them? I mean, these are police officers. So the police service is not paying them?
The police service is not paying them.
Okay.
There were allocations made beforehand, and the problem is that they work beyond the 12 hours that was agreed upon, and therefore they should get further remuneration.
Okay. So in that case, the police services are breaking the law.
The police service is not fulfilling its commitments on the agreements that were signed before the election started.
Okay, you're being kind. I'm saying they're breaking the law.
That's something else. But yeah, we're hopeful that with the coming days, such matters will be resolved. But we're quite adamant that they need to obviously comply with what has been agreed on.
All right. So what's the plan of action now? I mean, there's lots of threats that are taking place. I mean, what's the plan of action to ensure that they do? Because ultimately, what do you want? You want to get the police officers getting paid, right?
No, that's the ultimate position that we do have, because they are signed agreements on that. We are hopeful that in the coming days such matters would be resolved. So up to so far, it's only KZN which has met with the management, and they said they would be coming back to them hopefully before the end of this week. Eastern Cape is also a development matter, and of course throughout the coming day we will be observing as to whatever else has been the challenges in different provinces. With Mpumalanga again as well, the main problem there was the issue of the people who had swapped deployments. You know, sometimes when you are available for deployment you can no longer make it. So there were changes in that, and the provincial leadership had engaged with the provincial commissioner in the province who was looking into the matter, and unfortunately just last week she was suspended. So there's currently an acting provincial commissioner, and we hope to take the matter up with him as well.
Okay, and just lastly, what then is the relationship now between SAPS management and the police officers you refer to? I would think there would be a very unnecessary tension.
No, definitely. It's unnecessary. It's an inconvenience. And of course, I think taking from previous experiences, our members are not happy about what has been happening. So as a union, we are trying to resolve those matters. We are hopeful that they would be resolved within a short space of time, though.
Okay, well, let's leave it at that. Let us know what's happened. Richard Mamabolo, the spokesperson for POPCRU, the South African the Police and Prisons Civil Rights Union, excuse me, claiming that the police officers that worked overtime during the election period not yet paid, and there's an issue of a lack of money to be able to get them paid, and hopefully that needs to be resolved like ASAP. Let's talk about initiation schools right after this.
Johannesburg Water is concerned about the current high water consumption, which is causing a severe strain on the entity's systems and threatens the sustainability of consistent bulk supply. Play your part in conserving water by following these simple tips. Reporting leaks and burst pipes. Do not leave taps dripping and repair your internal leaks. Wash your car on the grass, as this will water your lawn at the same time, and shorten your showering time. Together, we can reduce water wastage and protect this precious resource. Brought to you by Johannesburg Water, a water utility that cares.
Are you blowing your paycheck on car insurance every month? Monica, 39 from Three Rivers, pays just 1,515 Rand a month for her 2018 BMW 320i.
None of the insurance companies has come near to the price I'm paying. I am happy at our insurance. I'm going nowhere.
SMS out to 30754 now for a quick quote that could save you hundreds every month. You'll also find out about included benefits like panic assistance and Help It Out 24-hour roadside assistance. Yusuf, 45 from Tegadal, pays just 700 Rand a month for his 2021 VW Polo.
Help It Out took the family up to go and see the snow and I got stuck. The service was quick even though it was in a very remote area. Absolutely phenomenal service from our insurance.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Right, now this is a cause for concern. The annual initiation season is underway. As always, calls have been made for South Africans to introduce proactive steps that are aimed at preventing fatalities and safeguarding the health and the well-being of the initiates. So just recently, it was revealed that illegal schools, and listen to this, they've abducted 138 initiates from the various communities, 2 people dying, 4 arrests. How real is this problem and how can this be allowed to continue? Let's find out more with Professor David Mosoma, who's the chairperson of the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities. In fact, the CRL Commission. Prof. Mosoma, welcome to the National Pulse. Hi.
And good afternoon, Ashraf. And how are you?
I'm very good indeed. Good, but I'm very concerned at the same time. First about, as always, these annual deaths that marks the annual initiations. Now we find there's another issue of initiates being abducted. It is, and the numbers are 138. It's mind-boggling.
This is one huge number. And in fact, this action is intended to tarnish the good practice of initiation. This can only be a result of individuals who do not respect the law. Last year, we had a big endeavor at Beachwood. We brought all the stakeholders responsible in the promotion and protection of the rights of these initiates. We collectively agreed that culture does not kill, and therefore nobody should blame culture when the violation of the rights of the initiate is actually at the center of this. Now, we have here a group of criminal syndicates who willy-nilly decide, instead of inviting young people through the process that has been agreed upon, they then abduct, forcing these young people to go for initiation. In other words, it's intended to blackmail the families, because once the young person is in there, the families have to pay, failing which some of these kids may not come back. And this is a great concern. And in fact, we are happy because the police have taken serious strides to protect this particular activity. And we are happy that the 138 young people have been rescued. Some of them went to the hospital, those who were affected, maybe hurt, and some of those went to the clinics, and those, all of them, in fact, have been discharged. They are back with their families. Unfortunately, 2 young people lost their lives. And in all of this, only 3 perpetrators have been arrested.
Okay, you said, this action is intended to tarnish the image of initiation school. So who intends to tarnish? What would be their motivation?
The motivation is money. Simple commercialization of the initiation. Because if there was no money involved, why would somebody go and abduct somebody's child to what end? Except to say the parents would have to pay after that. But of course, at what price? Some of the kids may not come back because nobody is accountable.
So help us understand this. What happens? There's initiation schools that young people attend in the first instance, right? But there are others who then get abducted. But when they get abducted, where do they end up? I mean, are they abducted as in kidnapped, or are they abducted and taken to another initiation school, not of their choice? Help us understand the difference.
How it happens is that they are illegal initiation schools where parents and young men agree that I'm going to initiate school, and there's a formalities required where there's a consensual document written, and of course they are exposed to medical examination to determine whether they are healthy, whether they can go to the school or not. And that process is not followed in this instance. You just find a young person, pick up the young person to the school that they have opened, which is illegal, is not legal. Because if it were legal schools, parents would be involved.
Yeah, okay, so you mentioned, two people died. There's been like 3 arrests. Is there any more you can tell us? Because what I'm looking at the numbers, since the arrest, is that the end of discussion, or is that bound to continue?
This is only statistics for Gauteng. We have not received statistics generally for the whole country. But we hope that would not be bigger than this. The abductions will be not as large as this. But it will be that in other places, the abductions of these young people forced to schools that they have not chosen to go to may be bigger. But it's, as I said at first, is that the police are working to this particular reality. They are doing almost everything in their powers to stop this kind of trend of abducting young people. Illegal initiation schools.
Let's then move on to the actual initiation. Again, that we understand, that is a cultural rite of passage. But again, over the years, far too many young people enter initiation school and they do not come out of there alive. What's your thoughts on that? What's the checks and balances to prevent the deaths of young people who enter these initiation schools?
The Customary Initiation Act provides that the first precondition is that the initiation schools and the caregivers and those responsible for opening it have the responsibility first and foremost to protect the rights of these young people, to make sure that their lives are taken care of, their security is taken care of. In other words, they must go in alive and come back alive. That is the nature of what this particular school is all about. It's not about killing. It's about ensuring that they go through a process of cultural socialization. So they come back as the protectors of the families and the protectors of the family, responsible young men, as it were. So these ones simply abduct them against their will, against the will of their parents, and force them to initiate school so that the parents can pay a price at the end of the day.
Yeah. Okay. Lots of questions to come out of that. Let's leave it at that for now. Professor David Mosoma, chairperson of the CRL Commission. And I wonder what others think about not just the initiation schools, but certainly the issues of young people being abducted to enter other illegal initiation schools. Make of that what you will. Thanks for your time, Prof. Mosoma. Right. You have any thoughts on this? Comment, text, or voice notes 0614 104 107, or you can also post on our social media pages. I'll certainly check it out on Twitter right away if you do that. Here's a question on the it's not even Ronaldo with an R-O, because you may confuse that with a footballer. It's Ronaldo, R-E.
Ronaldo calls segregation utterances were made long time before. The question is, why do organizations such as human rights now deviate from their main mandate of defending the rights of the people and dancing to the political tune? Because they could have laid those charges long before he becomes a member of parliament. Kanjo.
Okay, Kanjo is raising a question. Okay, I mean, look, do they ignore it now? I don't think they should ignore it. But should they have done something before? Well, maybe it's a valid question. I wonder what others think. Why this long? Maybe sometimes they don't know about it, but maybe that's me being naive, because it was in the social media spaces for a long time. But, do you track back to 10 years with someone like him? But now they know, and now they need to do something about it, isn't it? Lots more we're going to talk about, including an update in terms of what may happen around, in fact, what powers does the president have? I'm talking about Ramaphosa, particularly in the current form of government we have now. But let's chew on that for a moment. Let's get the news now. It's 4 o'clock with Madupi.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. The top stories is our rhino poachers killed in the Kruger and new Limpopo MECs to be sworn in. A very good afternoon. 4 rhino poachers have been shot and killed in 2 separate incidents in the Kruger National Park in Limpopo. SANParks spokesperson Ike Phahla says the suspected poachers were involved in a shootout with park rangers on both occasions. He says police are investigating.
We can indeed confirm that there were 2 contacts. The first one was made on the 14th of June, and a heavy caliber hunting rifle, ammunition and poaching equipment were recovered. One suspect was fatally wounded and his accomplices managed to escape. The second incident took place on the 18th of June at night, where 3 suspects were fatally wounded and a heavy caliber hunting rifle, poaching equipment and ammunition were recovered.
The DA has sought to clarify its decision to suspend its newly sworn-in MP Ronaldo Gousa. This comes as the Human Rights Commission files papers in the Equality Court regarding the alleged racial slurs made by Gousa in a 2010 video that's been circulating online. The DA says it has established that the video is genuine and not a fake, as had initially been suspected. The party's Richard Newton says the video that they saw for the first time yesterday is totally against everything that they stand for.
Question was posed to him, and he indicated that this video had been altered in some way. But of course, as soon as we found out that this was not the case, immediate action was taken. And of course, now there is a process that will follow, the disciplinary process, and everything will flow from there. We're getting a lot of questions about whether he will still be an MP or other issues involved, but he is now being totally prevented from doing any political party events, anything for or in the name of the party. And the Federal Legal Commission process is about to start.
The newly appointed members of the Executive Committee in Limpopo have arrived at the Ranch Hotel in Polokwane, where they're expected to be sworn in this afternoon. Premier Poppy Ramathuba appointed her 10-member executive on Tuesday. 4 of the appointed MECs come from the previous administration of Stan Mathabata, while 6 are new. Limpopo High Court Judge President George Patudu will conduct the ceremony. The Northwest Provincial Government has officially appointed members of the Executive Council who will serve in the 7th administration. They comprise of 5 new members who were not part of the previous administration. Among them is 32-year-old Wessels Mureng, the youngest member, who will lead Community Safety and Transport Management. Other new MECs include Colin Maine, who will head the Sports, Arts and Culture Department, Elizabeth Mukua, who will lead Public Works and Roads, and Bitsa Lenkopane, who will take over Economic Development, Environment and Tourism. And police in Nairobi, Kenya have fired tear gas and deployed mounted units as hundreds protested against plans to raise taxes aimed at reducing the budget deficit. Protesters say the tax rises will hurt the economy and raise the cost of living for Kenyans who are already struggling to make ends meet. A Kenyan parliamentary panel on Tuesday urged the government to scrap some of the new taxes proposed in its finance bill, including new ones on car ownership, bread, cooking oil, and financial transactions. The top story at 4 o'clock, 4 rhino poachers have been shot and killed in 2 separate incidents in the Kruger National Park in Limpopo. For SAFM News, ke Modupi Makgalemele.
In sports, Saskok announces further athletes selected to represent Team SA at the Paris Olympics, and the Warriors wary of the Bulls. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 northbound in central Johannesburg has a crash at Crown Interchange. The N1 southbound in Midrand has a crash before Olifantsfontein Road. In Pretoria, Mabopane Highway eastbound has a crash reported at Eskom Patleli Drive, and Eskom Patleli Drive northbound has delays towards Moot Street. In KZN, the N2 southbound queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. The N3 westbound has a truck crash reported after Cliffdale exit, causing some heavy delays. And the N3 eastbound, an earlier stationary truck reported at Ashburton, has been cleared, but traffic is still queuing. In Cape Town, Okavango Road northbound in Kraaifontein is slow moving at the N1 highway. Main Road outbound in Observatory is slow moving towards the N2 highway. And Kendall Road in Deep River has construction site works reported near Boundary Road, so you're asked to expect delays in the area. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, the second hour of the National Pulse, and certainly the big question as always is what for you moves the National Pulse today, and different questions, different thoughts, different ways for each one of us to interpret what it is that truly moves the National Pulse. But you certainly can tell me, WhatsApp, voice notes, or text 0614 104 107, or post on social media too using the hashtag The National Pulse, and just tag SFM Radio, Twitter or X, as well as on Facebook too. We'll be chatting to Tembisa Fakude coming up later on about what powers does the president, South Africa's president, have at this point in time. It's a fascinating conversation that I'm looking forward to. I probably could have done the same thing to the ANC chief whip, but we're going to talk to him about the government of national unity and that relationship that's now developing, a few days old, between the ANC and the other political parties, in particular I would say the two senior ones. Some may debate that. We're talking about the DA. With me is the ANC's chief whip, Indumiseni Ntuli. Appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to your listeners, and much appreciated for inviting us.
Pleasure. And of course, for you, it's for you as with the party. It's breaking new ground. So looking forward to conversing with you on a range of issues in your new position too. Yeah.
Yes, certainly. Well, we'll appreciate that from time to time as the ANC caucus in Parliament, the ANC, of course, has always been accessible to the media and SFM in particular. That we must continue to exchange ideas because that is what essentially defines the national discourse. When the population understand what their governing party and the leading party in the country is doing, and of course that party also has an opportunity to interface with the population.
Absolutely. So let's start with first things first. You know, an agreement was put together on Friday. We know that at the National Assembly. There's been some issues of concern regarding overreach in terms of what the different parties can and can't do, and in particular, it is to do with the DA and certain pronouncements that they've made. So perhaps I'll give you an opportunity to start with in terms of what do you make of what's been said, in particular by the DA chair, Helen Zille.
Well, you see, Ashraf, there's been a misunderstanding on some of the spirit and the latter of the clauses that are contained in the statement of intent. And one would not have expected that, especially from the political parties that have been involved in the discussion. With the general population, we would appreciate when somebody says, no, but this is written this way, and therefore I understand it to mean this. But with the DA and any other political party that on several occasions has had an opportunity to engage with the ANC, we have been disappointed about what appeared to be a distortion of the commonly adopted position. And we have taken a decision as the ANC that we are going to continue to engage the partners in the GNU in order to ensure that there is clarity of thought about what we have agreed upon and how we're expected to execute it. And the reason why we're doing that is essentially because this whole idea is the brainchild of the African National Congress, and the ANC remains a principal leader of the GNU, which if ever there are such challenges and contradictions, it has to rise to the occasion, interact with whomever among the partners seems to be concerned about, the interpretation, the understanding, or the practice relating to what has been agreed upon and containing a statement of intent.
Take a step back in terms of when you talk about this distortion. So what has been the distortion that you talk about from the DA?
Well, there are two areas that have been concerning to us. The first one is that the ANC initiated a discussion with all political parties represented in the National Assembly, including the Democratic Alliance. And we met with many of them on several occasions. They raised their concerns. In some cases, we were able to reach a consensus. In some instances, we had a difficulty to agree, as it is the case with EFF and the MK party. We then reached a stage where parties were now voluntarily signing in or assenting into the statement of intent. The DA, the PA, the IFP, the Good Party, and later on, of course, the PAC. Now, the DA had then came to the conclusion, which we have been engaging them to say that was a wrong conclusion, that after the signing of the statement of intent by the DA, nobody else should have been permitted to sign the statement of intent without consulting the DA. Mm-hmm. And that is completely wrong, because it's the ANC, not the DA, which has been consulting with all political parties. The issue of the DA being the first among those who signed the statement of intent, the PA becoming the second, the third being the IFP, and the last of the six parties being the PAC, was essentially the function of process, not the function of importance that were attaching to the individual parties as Afghanistan. It was a logistical management. So we have been saying to the DA, look, once the president has set up government and the parliament has been finalized, anyone that may be interested to join the GNU will therefore have to be assessed on the basis of the clause they've referred to on our statement, which is that as the collective members of the GNU, we must receive that request for application or affiliation, discuss its implication, and agree on how to proceed. But before those processes are finalized, the leader of the GNU, which is the African National Congress, that began with this process, persuaded all political parties, including the DA, about the correctness of this manner of proceeding. Has a primary responsibility to engage with and listen to all those that want to engage with the ANC. Second area, Ashraf, which the DA was also, in a way, in our view, misunderstanding, is the prerogative of the president. The first clause on that underpins the statement of intent is that all of us must be loyal to the Constitution of the Republic. One of the clauses that are contained in the Constitution of the Republic is that the cabinet of this country is a prerogative. It's an exclusive prerogative of the President of the Republic. The fact that we have agreed on our document that the President will exercise that prerogative in consultation with political parties was essentially to ensure that the IFP doesn't wake up and hear that one of its members is being announced as a minister or a deputy minister or a chair of a committee without the IFP leader having been engaged and taken into confidence about the intention of the president. But it doesn't mean that the parties are going to sit somewhere in the corner and instruct the president that give us 10, give us 5, and they give other. No, don't give that one. We don't like them, so don't give them a position. So that's another area that we thought is urgent for us to clarify with the GA.
Okay, so let's get clarity on this then. Let's start with the cabinet issue that you just spoke about, right? Is it true that in terms of the consultation, there must be still consensus buying 60% of the signatories to this agreement in terms of 60% of the representation at Parliament, or is it still going to be left to the absolute discretion of the President to choose the cabinet simply in consultation? And consultation really means, I want to seek your opinion. I mean, that's my opinion.
That's correct. The position is that we all have accepted that we respect the Constitution of the Republic, and none of us had said attached conditions to that respect. So President Cyril Ramaphosa has been elected by us in Parliament because we trust him that he will exercise his constitutional prerogative consistent with what would be in the best interest of the country and in the best interest of the parties who are represented in the GNU. When he consults with any of the leaders of the parties represented in the GNU, it would not be because he can't exercise his constitutional prerogatives. It will be to consult because politically, for the management of the process, as I'm saying, it will be wrong for the president, or it may not appear to be appropriate for the president to announce a member of a particular organization, and that becomes also a surprise to the leadership of that organization.
Okay, I understand that part. So let's just be clear about it. Does he have to consult the other parties? The answer is yes. I think you've said that. But does he, in consulting with them, do they have to make a joint decision to form the cabinet, or does he simply consult with them, seek their wise opinion, but the ultimate decision is his? Which one is it?
He consults with them in order to understand their own view, but ultimately he makes the decision alone as the head of state.
Okay. Do the other parties know that?
No, they know that. I mean, anyone who would pretend not to know, understand that, would be in violation, would be acting in violation of the Constitution of the Republic. And the undertaking we've made, and we've insisted to everybody, including the DA, that let's be loyal to what we've agreed upon. It's the Constitution of the Republic that dictates the manner in which the head of state appoints the cabinet of this country.
All right, then let's get back to the first issue, which was, I think, the issue that Helen Ziller raised. Was surprised that maybe you as the ANC were speaking to other parties like the PAC without their knowledge. So has that been clarified that in fact the ANC is the senior partner in this agreement and can invite whomsoever they wish, or do the others have a veto over who gets invited and accepted?
No, there's no veto. We have clarified that in public. We're continuing to do it, but we've equally clarified it directly to the Democratic Alliance to say to them, at the stage where we are yet to finalize the processes that are articulated in the statement of intent, which is the setting up the government of this country under the leadership of President Cyril Ramaphosa, and going back to the legislature and finalize the deployment of various chairpersons of committees and all those other committees that must be done. Now, between now and then, the process has not been concluded. We can't close the door. The leader of the GNU, who had invited the DA into the GNU, Ashraf, you may not know this. The idea of the GNU was not originally supported by the DA and other political parties who later on accepted it. But it was on the basis that the ANC was genuinely engaging and persuading them to understand that we've got national interest and all of us must find a way in which we can subject our own parochial party interest and allow the national interest to take precedence, because we want a country that is stable, we want a country that is peaceful, and we have urgent tasks, which is to address the challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality.
Okay, so to move on,
agreed.
Okay. So what did you have to do to get them to agree? Because if they didn't originally support the GNU, what did you have to do as the sweetener to get them to support it?
Well, it was engagement and persuasion. Of course, the principles that we laid out on the statement of intent about, firstly, we have to be loyal to the Constitution. Secondly, we've got challenges in this country. The economy is not serving the majority. There's high level of unemployment. We need to act together to address those. Thirdly, we said, let's convene a national dialogue where all parties, beyond political parties, the religious leaders, the business community, civil society formations, must converge under one roof and reflect on the state of the nation and decide the way forward. So that the government that is coming in is not just a compromise between political parties who are in the GNU in terms of its actual content and program, but it's a reflection of the aspirations of South Africans in their entirety.
Okay, so I hear you. So what ultimately was the deal maker? What moved it from deal breaker to deal maker?
So that's what made the DA and all other political parties to say, okay, sure, now we understand that the ANC is truly acting in the best interest of the ANC. Because we kept on reminding them that if we were not a party that really takes the interest of the country as primary, we could have taken a decision that we didn't win with a decisive majority, we are going to wait and be an opposition. None of them, for instance, were going to have a capacity to form government, given the level at which they hate one another, including some of them how they hate us. But the reason why we were able to bring everybody together is because we reminded ourselves that at the end of the day, we are the ANC. We have to be magnanimous. We have to swallow our individual pride as individuals and understand that ahead of us are national interest. And the ANC historically has always been taking strategic decisions to advance the cause of our people.
What? Just a thought. I mean, there's some tension. There seems to be some tension already. What happens if the DA pulls out of the GNU?
I don't think the DA will contemplate taking that direction because. But let's assume it does. Firstly, if it does that, it will be betrayal of the national interest for which they've committed in the statement of intent. But secondly, if it does that, I have heard some people saying then the government is going to collapse. No, the government doesn't collapse because one party decided to move out. The government can only collapse if the majority of the parties represented in parliament at whatever point in time, following the laws of the republic, decide to vote that government in a vote of no confidence.
Okay.
Now, we don't think from where we are, those who believe in the who are loyal to the national interest, will want to place the country in such a difficult position as we usually see it in local municipalities.
Okay, here's the last thing. Are we expecting a announcement tonight with regard to the cabinet appointments?
Well, the first sitting of this country is the one with the prerogative. I don't know when is he appointing his cabinet. It may be tonight, tomorrow, Saturday or Sunday. All I know is that wherever he is, the president is conscious of the fact that we've got to expedite these processes in order for the new government to assume office and respond to the pressing challenges of our people.
Okay, that's where I can leave it. I appreciate your time. The ANC's Chief Whip, Mdobiseni Ntuli. I wonder what you make of that conversation. So much, in my opinion, came out of that. Believe me, we can have a whole 1 hour conversation of talk, call in just on that. We'll talk to Tembisa Fakule right after this.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
What are your thoughts about coalition choices?
We said we are open to talk to everybody, including the MK party. And it's very difficult to talk to people there because when you talk to them, they tell you that they are still waiting for Ubaba.
Anyone seen
Ubaba?
Have you seen him? Have you seen him?
And Ubaba gatholakala.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Okay, that was alone a fascinating conversation. Let's have another conversation, which I think should be all important. And that is the role of the president. What powers does President Ramaphosa have? What can he do? What can't he do? Not just in terms of the constitution, but in terms of the practice of being the president, right? With me is Tembisa Fakule, who's a political analyst, of course, as well as heading up AfroCid. Tembisa, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So perhaps you can answer this question. Yeah, what powers does the president have now?
The president has got the same powers that he had in the previous administration. The only difference is that this time around he has to tread very carefully because he wouldn't want to offend some of the new members in his government of national unity. But you'll have the power to make decisions as he did before, as it did in other previous administration.
Okay, but so that's the literal interpretation of the Constitution and his powers. But as you've already alluded to, the fact that we have a government of national unity, that's going to clip his powers because he has to, I would think, make decisions by consensus. Otherwise, it would come across as a one-man show, isn't it?
Indeed, he has to consult extensively and widely, but I think he's going to try and avoid that because that could just create a situation where those that are part of the GNU get used to it. So I think he has to be firm on certain decisions that has to be made. That particularly those that do not require much of consensus. But knowing Cyril Ramaphosa, I think, is in the right space. That's where he belongs. He's a negotiator of note, respected around the world. And I think he's quite happy to be where he is at the moment. And we've seen him in terms of accepted this defeat in inverted commas of the ANC, because it puts him in a position where he can really be himself, and we can see the best of him that we haven't seen over the past couple of years.
So you're saying that you'd expect him to try and avoid consultation as opposed to avoid confrontation. That means he would try and make as many decisions as he can on his own to try and avoid an expectation from the others that he will consult them on everything. In terms of being a consultative leader, wouldn't that be counterproductive to all the things they've just said and we just heard even yesterday?
Yeah, but I don't think he's willing to micromanage, micro-govern the government of national unity. He's going to go ahead and take decisions that are needed to be taken on a daily basis. But there are certain other decisions. I think those are already been spelled out between all those that are participating in GNU as issues that will require broader consultation should they arise. But I think there's also an understanding that there are day-to-day issues that require presidential decisions. And if he has to consult on a daily basis and on all those tiny issues that are often part of governing a country, we might just find ourselves not making decisions as a country and standing still. So I think President Cyril Ramaphosa is aware of that, and I think they were smart enough to spell out all the bigger issues that will require consultation. But on a day-to-day basis, I think they'll get used to a Cyril Ramaphosa that will make decisions.
Okay, you're saying he's aware of it. Do you think the other parties are aware of it and actually understand it fully?
I think so, and I like what Velenkosini Hlabisa said in one of his press conferences. Mm-hmm. That is, they must have continual meetings, even if there's nothing to discuss, but they must meet. And I think that is a good idea, because what's going to happen is there are going to be meetings that are going to be scheduled on a monthly basis, and they will have to meet and discuss. And I think it's at that platform that will voice their dissatisfaction, should there be any. But I don't see Cyril Ramaphosa really micromanaging this government. I think he's going to continue with his style of governing. By the way, he has always been consultative. That's why he's known as the Ramaphosa, because he never took decisions. Mm-hmm. He always this wide, style of consulting his colleagues before he makes a decision. So he's right where he belongs, but I don't think he's going to micromanage.
So you're suggesting that what has been seen by many others as a weakness in terms of the Ramaphosa could well be the strength, particularly in the formation of government that it is now?
I think so. I think, by the way, the alliances, I've argued yesterday that the alliance of President Ramaphosa is more outside the ANC than within the ANC, because the ANC is further fractured. Notwithstanding what we've seen with MK party, but there is also a division within the ANC in a tripartite alliance in terms of this government of national unity. So the people who are actually supporting are not really his comrades. The people who are going to be supporting this, and I think he would like to establish a much more closer relationship, is going to be the DA, the IFP, and others that have been joined, including the PAC.
But doesn't that pose a future problem for the ANC, that the greatest threat to the government of national unity may well come from within the ANC itself?
Yeah, so it's going to be challenged, but many people are seeing this as the last kicks of the ANC as we know it. The ANC might just, in future, absorb all the other smaller parties, particularly those that have joined the government of national unity, and become a new, different ANC. There's a talk that even the DA might just find some of its members joining the ANC. You might have a different beast in the next 10 years in terms of politics of this country.
Oh, that's quite fascinating. What do you make then? Just yesterday, by the way, I had Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman on there, and he made the point that if the ANC could actually get into a situation of agreement with a party like the DA, where they are philosophically poles apart, why can't they try even further to negotiate a deal with the MK and the EFF to make sure that they, whatever it takes to get them on board as part of the GNU? What do you make of that?
Yeah, I heard what Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman has said, but one will ask a fundamental question: is the MK and the EFF a non-racial organization? I'll say no. MK has come out quite clearly as being a tribalist Zulu nationalist organization. EFF is quite very open and outspoken in terms of its position when it comes to matters of race. The ANC has come out very clear, at least the ANC of post this election, that it stands for non-racial politics, which is something that we have not heard nor seen in the ANC, particularly during the tenure of Jacob Zuma. So this has been clearly articulated. So I'll disagree with those who say that there are similarities between MK, EFF, and ANC. I think not anymore. I think these three organizations espouse different politics. EFF has gone on, for example, on its commitment to nationalization and socialism of its economics. Seem to be looking towards the east compared to what the ANC under Cyril Ramaphosa seeks to be doing. The MK part, we don't know much about its economic position, but we know exactly what it is. It is a Zulu nationalist organization, and those are major differences. And I think the articulation, not only by Cyril Ramaphosa, but also by Mr. Steenhuisen, suggests that we want to resuscitate these non-racial politics, which is, by the way, the glue that has kept this country together and avoided a lot of conflicts.
Okay, that's where we can leave it. Thembisa Fakude from AfroStat. Much appreciate your time and some fascinating, thought-provoking insights that he has shared. I wonder whether others would agree. Do you agree? Like, he has a point. Well, you tell me what's your point. Let's get the news headlines now. It's just gone 4:30 with Madupi.
Thanks, Mr. Garda, and good afternoon. In your headlines, the Financial Sector Conduct Authority says it has identified over 4,100 South African employers who have fallen behind in making contributions to employees' retirement funds. 4 rhino poachers have been shot and killed in 2 separate incidents in the Kruger National Park in Limpopo. And Serbia is threatening to withdraw from the Men's European Football Championships unless UEFA punishes the teams whose fans chanted abuse targeting the Serbs. And those are your headlines. A full news update at 5.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, in central Johannesburg, the M1 northbound has a crash reported at Crown Interchange. The M1 southbound is slow moving towards Crown Interchange, and the M2 eastbound is slow moving near Rizik Street exit. And Hans Koeman Street westbound in Bromhof is slow moving at Rabi Street. In KZN, the N3 westbound has a truck crash reported after Cliffdale exit. The N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. Bayhead Road has roadworks with traffic restrictions between the Shell Garage and Sydney Road, and South Coast Road has roadworks with traffic restrictions between Bayhead Road and Rick Turner Road, so you're asked to expect delays and diversions. In Cape Town, the N7JX Hartwell Drive southbound is queuing towards Voortrekker Road. Bakencraft Street outbound is slow moving towards the elevated freeway. Robert Sobukwe Road southbound has a stationary truck reported at the N2 highway, and Brackenfell Boulevard northbound is slow moving at that N1 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, let's get to sports, and there's an Olympic countdown to me. What's the latest there?
There's exactly 36 days until the Olympics, and SASCOC has announced additional 81 names and sporting codes in its second team announcement. The latest announcement features athletes who will compete in athletics, cycling, hockey, rowing, triathlon, and Springbok Sevens. There are also a number of athletes from equestrian, golf, rowing, and skateboarding sporting codes that have achieved qualification that will be named in due course. Now, significant other names added to Team SA include Johanita Schultz, who's a double African Games gold medalist in badminton, Henry Schoeman, a triathlete, and John Smith, a rower. In football, Richards Bay chairman Jomo Biela says that there are no guarantees that they will avoid being in the relegation dogfight again next season if they are still playing away from home. Biela says that the Kingswell Tini Stadium remains a rented venue that comes with a lot of costs, ultimately contributing to the club almost losing their top flight status.
We need to go back to Richards Bay. That's the first thing. As long as we're not playing in Richards Bay, we always have challenges. You see, if you come here, how much are we spending here? We hire this ground. We hire a ground. We come a day before. We hire accommodation. We hire a ground for our final preparation. We don't have a sponsor. So what do you expect from us? So the only thing that can help us is for us to play in Richards Bay. As long as we're playing away, then we'll always have challenges.
Well, he says that he hopes that by the time the new season starts, the club will be eligible to host their league matches in their own backyard at the Umhlatuze Sports Complex to avoid playoffs.
So we're hoping that after this, they will take us serious and try to make it a point. Come August, September, we're able to play in Richards Bay. No, definitely playoffs are always stressful. We don't know what to expect. Because even if you analyze our team now, we are not immune from being analyzed. Understand? So, but I think a team like University of Pretoria, they made it easy for us because they don't change. They play like so. We know how to prepare. Understand? With Morocco, I thought maybe. In fact, I told you when they come here, they're not going to because they play in a very small field. That's why we went there for 1 point.
In rugby, fullback Josh McKay says that the Glasgow Warriors are expecting a formidable Vodacom Bulls side when the teams clash in the URC final at Loftus Versfeld on Saturday. The Bulls edged Leinster in Pretoria last week before Glasgow beat defending champions Munster to book a place in the finale. McKay says that he's quite eager to stretch his legs on the Highveld again during a must-win showdown with Jake White's troops. Anything's off with cycling. Russian cyclist Alexander Vlasov has declined to take part in the Olympic Games in Paris due to his very busy calendar. Vlasov was one of the 14 Russian athletes approved to compete in the Games under a neutral flag by the International Olympic Committee. Now, the IOC suspended Russia from the 2024 Games last year, but gave the green light for its athletes to compete as neutrals as long as they do not actively support the Kremlin's offensive in Ukraine. Well, that's it. It is a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour.
Thanks for that, Chumi. Yeah, we will certainly look forward to that. Lots happening in the world of sport.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
All right, we should be chatting to Makwe Masilela in just a moment or so. There's questions from, TG saying Ashraf, the DA's taking chances and this could force the ANC to opt out of the current arrangement. And they must remember that no one won in the elections and they can't bring their narrow political interests regarding parties like the PA and the parties like Rise Mzansi and Bauza and other smaller parties, and they must not push the ANC to the dangerous positions of opting out of the whole issue from TG. TG, honestly, I think this is like absolutely early days. I can't see people joining and leaving on the basis of one minor squabble. There's been far worse than that. But here's my other thought. I think the last party to opt out of the government of national unity would be the ANC, because strategically that just can't be. That would be the massive own goal that I think about. Let's talk business in a moment.
Lights, camera, scalpel. Every second counts, and every cut, every thought, every action is critical. Critical. Mondays to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 11 June. Channel your best drama with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
Richmond United ladies have big plans to spend more time in the top 4. But First Touch FC want to live up to their name and put together first touches that will trouble their opponents. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch the Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. Richmond United Ladies FC versus First Touch Ladies FC. This Saturday, 22 June at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # we love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
SAFM Youth Month Takeover. SAFM invites young people between the ages of 18 to 35 to take over the airwaves this Youth Month. All you have to do is send a WhatsApp voice note or text message to 061 410 4107 or email info@safm.co.za. Tell us which show you'd like to co-host and what the two compelling issues facing our 30 years of democracy are, and we could be calling you. Terms and conditions apply.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, let's get to the markets with Makwe Masilena, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Good chatting to you as always, Makwe. Let's talk. You got numbers for Standard Bank and Harmony, right?
Definitely. Afternoon to you, Ashraf, and to the listeners. Standard Bank, this is their 5 months trading update. The guys managed to grow the headline earnings by low to mid single digits, and banking activities profits grew by mid to single digits. And Ashraf, by changing how they recognize interest when it comes to stage 3 loans, that resulted in an increase when it comes to the net interest income and an equal and opposite increase in credit impairment, but no impact on headline earnings per share. Remember, stage 3 loans are loans where credit risk increases to the point where it is considered credit impaired, and the income growth was supported by the higher average interest rates and higher client transactional volumes, but dampened by lower trading volumes. And as expected, the credit impairment charges were marginally higher, and higher charges when it comes to business and commercial banking and also for personal and private banking were partially offset by lower charges when it comes to corporate and investment banking. Ashraf, it means businesses and private individuals are feeling the impact of these elevated interest rates. And Harmony, the guys, they will meet their annual production, the grade thereof, and also the cost guidance for the full year 2024. Exceptional operating free cash flow. Free cash flow, Ashraf, is what is the company, what is available as cash to repay creditors and as dividends and interest to investors, and usually a measure of a company's financial health. So the cash flow generation continued, and that was due to improved recovery grades, higher rent and gold price received, sustained operational excellence, and their total production expected to exceed 48,210 kilograms, with all-in sustaining cost will be below 920,000 per kilogram. Remember, the current gold price in rand terms is just over 1.3 million, and then the PE is not too bad when compared to their peers.
Right, and you've got the local and global markets?
Yeah. China kept benchmark lending rate steady, and it was another busy day for central bankers, that is the likes of the UK, Switzerland, and Norway, making interest rates decision. The Swiss National Bank trimmed rates by 25 basis points, a second cut this year. Norway and UK left their rates unchanged, and investors are also betting that the cooling US inflation will convince the Fed to lower rates sooner and by more than officials have already indicated. And with the dollar slightly firming as traders awaited fresh market catalyst, the rand unfortunately fell, breaching that 18 to the US dollar. Even firmer commodity prices couldn't help, and locally we saw our April motor trade sales increasing by 3.9%, and global shares neared record highs, supported by investor confidence in the prospect of a drop when it comes to US interest rates this year. But the local boss giving back some of yesterday's gains, profit taking kicked in, and traders are also waiting for that formation of a cabinet. And oil prices are hovering just below the 7-week high as escalating conflict in the Middle East raised supply disruption fears, while traders are waiting the US inventory data to get some signal when it comes to the demand side of things. Brent crude is up 0.8% at $85 a barrel, and gold managed to touch 2-week high as soft US economic data kept the rate cut bets intact, and we see the yellow metal is up 0.9% at 2,350, but platinum is down 0.2% at 979. Dow just like S&P up 0.4%, DAX just like the FTSE up 0.6%, CAC up 0.5%, but the JSE is down 0.7%, with our industrials down 1.1%, financials down 1.5%, but our resources are up 1.3%. The rand has weakened almost 0.5% compared to the US dollar. It's now 18.06, 22.90 to the pound, and 19.37 to the euro.
Right, great stuff. Thanks for that, Mark. We'll chat to you tomorrow, but another round of market updates coming up in just under an hour's time. Right, let's get to some of the voice notes and text messages we've been receiving, and some of the posts. Certainly, some people pretty upset about Dambisa Fakudi's comments about, in particular, the MK party being a tribal party. I mean, do you concur with him, or you concur with those who say, "Hold it, he's out of line"? I wonder what you may think on this one. Right, let's get to Cape Town now with Mandla. Hi, Mandla.
Ashraf.
Yes.
Look, man, this guy who's racist guy from Eastern Cape.
You're talking of the DA person. You're talking of Ronaldo Gous. So you're referring to him.
Yeah.
We say racist, alleged. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, that guy might have been provoked by the EFF. This happened 15 years ago.
About 10 years ago. The video. Yeah.
Yes. He might have been provoked by the EFF. EFF, at its formation, was an anti-white organization. And no one called them to order. They were left to do as they wish. So politicians gain when their society is polarized. Look now, this morning, this guy, Kunene,
Kenny,
from the PA, yes, talking about Helen Zille. Saying that Helen Zille, the reason she doesn't want them there is because of white supremacy, she's white, she's a madam, and all that. Instead of arguing the point, instead of saying, no, Helen Zille is wrong. We're not about position. Look at our history as a PA. We're not about, instead of arguing the point, she's attacking Helen Zille as being a racist person. So the politicians, black politicians, are the ones who provoke white people. Imagine if a white person can say, the reason Ramaphosa is doing this and this is because he is black. What would black people say in this country? They would say, that person is racist and the Human Rights Commission must deal with that white person.
Okay, that's so interesting.
We as black people, our leaders, politicians, are the ones who are provoking this thing. In the Western Cape, the ANC.
I'm gonna have to move on. Here's a quick question for you, just very quick one. Do you have sympathy for Ronaldo Gous?
But we must address why did he say that?
Okay.
He might have been provoked by the EFF.
All right, you made that point. I got that. Thank you for that call. Well, there you are. I've always said one of the great things about hosting a show like this on a national platform, we are completely connected to the national pulse or what the nation feels, and we have strong views, and they cross the board there. That's one from Mandla. Let's get Safudi on the line. Safudi, hi.
Good evening, Ashraf Garda.
Afternoon or evening, take it whichever way you want, whichever time zone you're in, I'll accept it.
Ashraf, for two wrongs don't make a right, and I think we are the product of our backgrounds. We are the product of where we coming from. But I say Christ a beloved country because we still have to travel a long distance when it comes to race relations. I think the poor chap is just exhibiting what is being said behind closed doors, and it's a slippery, but this country ought to not to pretend and be cosmetic about it. There's still racism in this country.
But I think that we know there's racism in most countries in the world. There's different levels of racism. Thanks for that call. Appreciate it. Thank you. Right. Good day and good evening to you. Let's get other thoughts on racism and the issue of Ronaldo Gous.
Hi, Ashraf. What I want to know about the situation is, why did he lie when he was asked about that video in the first place? And why was he so arrogant about being 16 years ago once he was confronted with the issue about the other videos he made? And why didn't he just apologize? I mean, I'm not saying it would have changed the outcome, but I mean, put some respectability on his name there for maybe attempting to be somewhat remorseful about his actions, but he's not. So yes, it's a great outcome that he's been suspended, but I just lots of unanswered questions. And the vetting process by the DA, that's one thing, because I mean this was on YouTube of all places. Don't need an expensive firm to go check up on that.
Well, there you are, absolutely. So, I mean, to answer that, I can't answer his why. I don't really know. But we'll be chatting to Teresa or Terry Oakley-Smith from Diversity coming up just after the news at 5. Listen out for that conversation. Right, there's more on that issue, I would think. Here's another.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. You know this whole thing with Mr. Ghosh. Yeah, he definitely shouldn't have said what he did say. But it's just amazing how people wait and wait and wait for what they believe is the right time to dig up dirt on someone that's now just been elected for the first time as an MP. And all of a sudden, something that was said and deleted, and he probably doesn't even have the same mindset anymore because he now works for the people of this country. And it was probably just in a moment of madness, not trying to try and dispel it and everything and make it easier. But it's amazing how people wait and they dig up dirt on someone and you wonder who shared it and what they actually have to gain. Mark from Cape Town.
Well, one thing is what do they have to gain, but then the other thing is like, did he do it? And I think the issue, and even the DA has admitted that he was economical with the truth. The issue is not just that he's been shown some racist tendencies. It's the level of the language he's used. That I think it is hugely concerning, and I think if you were part of, not just South Africa, but if you were part of the DA, would you want someone like that in your party? I mean, that really is absolutely fundamental. Okay, let's move on to other issues. I'll take further calls on this issue, by the way. Also, we'll be chatting to Pat Mashlangu, from Pat on Brands, about his big event and his thoughts on youth employment and unemployment. Looking forward to that conversation around 5:20. So, but right now, as we still in the midst of Youth Month, what about the youth with regards to responsible gambling? Right after this.
Delve into the intense personal journeys of individuals whose bad choices have led to severe consequences, where each episode unpacks these transformative stories told through raw, first-hand experiences of those who live them. It's a hard-hitting and emotional exploration of real-life struggles, showcasing the heavy price of redemption. Channel your best reality with My Secret Enemy, Mondays at 6 p.m. only on S3.
Richmond United ladies have big plans to spend more time in the top 4. But First Touch FC wants to live up to their name and put together first touches that will trouble their opponents. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch them Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. Richmond United Ladies FC versus First Touch Ladies FC. This Saturday, 22 June at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Okay, let's get on to another issue as we're in the midst of Youth Month. Right, there's been this ongoing concern that there's just far too much underage gambling. Some may say even forget all gambling, but certainly underage gambling in particular is usually problematic. It targets the most vulnerable and ensures that they have these gambling habits, maybe for the rest of their lives. So what's the response to all of that? We speak now to Melo Makwena, with the Assistant Manager for Advocacy and Communications at the SARGF, which is the South African Responsible Gambling Foundation. Melo, I'll tell you what, good chatting to you first up. Some may say, can ever be such a thing as responsible gambling?
Definitely is. Thank you for having me. There is definitely such a thing as responsible gambling, as much as there is such a thing as private gambling.
I suppose the broader issue is, for many people, and maybe that's why we're talking to you, is once people get hooked onto gambling, very few, maybe I'm generalizing, actually know when to stop.
Well, it's not very few. I think we would rather say there's very few that realize and then seek treatment or seek help. It might be that some don't know where to get help, although you would have your advocates carrying the 0800 line that they should use to get help.
So let's talk about youth. I mean, so there's a concern about the high numbers of underage gambling, right? What are the stats say about that?
Well, we don't really currently have numbers that speak to underage directly, right? But we are seeing from the field, we have a Taking Risk to Schools program where we visit schools to warn children about underage gambling. And the feedback that we receive from the learners is speaking numbers as to children moving on to certain gambling games. Back in the day, it used to be your Zippy dice, spinning of coin rather, and cards that they play at home. But now we are sort of an upgrade into them telling us how they are getting into betting apps using parents' phones, into how they are playing certain games and competing with other people where they have prizes internationally, which are loot boxing games and so forth. So that's where the concern we are starting to pick up the concern as a South African.
And clearly the barriers to entry are lower now. I mean, it means the risks are even higher, isn't it?
Absolutely. The risks are very high right now.
So how do you combat that?
So we are currently conducting research into understanding how gamification currently may contribute to harmful effects of the youth being affected by problem gambling. And I think from therein, we can be able to take things forward. However, we do have interim interventions in health available. We have a minor intervention program under our social services unit where we provide specialized care and support to minors, because we have had minors who approach us because they are either affected at home or they want to stop their gambling, which they do, especially at the schools, and they are struggling to stop. And of course, those only happen when children now are disseminated the information or do receive the information where to get help and are aware of the effects of the games that they play.
Aren't they, effectively swimming upstream insofar as there are forces that are mitigating them against them in terms of wanting them to get hooked onto gambling and targeting them, direct targeting in through various platforms, some of them you've already alluded to?
I mean, it wouldn't be said to say that it is targeted to the youth. But when we look at the current generations of Generation Z and millennials, they are internet dependent. They are high users of cell phones. It might not be that it's targeted to them, but this is the generations that are at risk because of their usage of cell phones. I don't know if you get what I mean. They are very technological driven, curious, and these games offer maybe like stages that they need to get to, and they want to challenge such games, and they would continue playing. So it's a matter of the game space, understanding the generation that is upcoming and the generation that they are offering the games to.
But how does one turn that around in terms of understanding? Meaning that, yes, you're going to give them the right to, gamble at whichever level, and the issue about the issue about gaming or gamification, but you certainly don't want them to become completely hooked or addicted, and that's problematic. And I'm saying if there's forces that are targeting them, even you may not see it, but they are being targeted, then what is the remedy to ensure that they do not fall prey to that type of targeting that ensures that they remain addicted beyond, what is reasonable?
I think for underage people or children, I would highly recommend or advocate for parental guidance and parental monitoring. Cell phones offer parental monitoring, all technological devices, which is slightly used by parents, especially in South Africa, to monitor the games that their children play and the time that they are playing, so that they are able to monitor their behavioral habits as well, right? Lately, I think my incident recently at the voting station, a parent just gave a phone to the child to play, and the entire time in the queue for about 3-4 hours, the child was playing games. There were no other breaks in between, and it's such things that we speak to when we speak to adults gambling. We are always advise that you must take breaks, do other activities in between when you're entertaining yourself. But with children, those games are not monitored in terms of how long they can play. There are no parental strict measures that are put into the children's phones as well. So we would advocate and for education as well, for the children to know, the reward systems and the reward pathway and how, chemicals are released in the games and how they are made to feel and how that then affects them at the end of the day. We would really recommend for education around such things by parents.
And I think it's maybe beyond the recommendation. Something absolutely has to happen. Let's leave it at that in terms of the what needs to happen. Tumelo Mokoena, appreciate your time, Assistant Manager of the Advocacy and Communications at the South African Responsible Gambling Foundation. Lots of other comments. I see that from a range of issues about, from Cape Town to the impact of social media. Rest assured, as soon as I can, I will take your calls or WhatsApp voice notes or text. But by the way, you can also post on social media, tweet or Facebook your thoughts on any of the issues that you think moves the national pulse today. It's 5 o'clock. Let's get the news now with Greg Hose.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you, Ashraf. In this news update, thousands of companies failed to pay pension contributions and suspected rhino poachers killed in Kruger Park. Good day to you. The Financial Sector Conduct Authority says identified more than 4,000 South African employers who've fallen behind in making contributions to employees' retirement funds. It says this means that these employers are not only in violation of the Pension Funds Act, but they're also withholding what is rightfully owed to their employees. The names of the companies on the authority's website, many of them are security and cleaning entities or municipalities. Matthew Parks is the parliamentary coordinator of Labour Federation COSATU.
Because what it means is that when workers go to retire or if they pass away, they and their families are denied the benefits that they had paid for and saved over many, many years. It plunges them to absolute poverty and despair. And in short, it's a criminal offence. It's scandalous. It's shocking. Also, what it means is that the money that should have accrued for these pension funds over many years of service and contribution that should have been invested and grown with interest to help ensure that these workers and their families can retire in comfort and dignity, they're not able to do so because the money was stolen. It wasn't paid for.
4 suspected rhino poachers have been shot and killed in 2 separate incidents in the Kruger National Park. SANPark spokesperson Ike Patla.
We can indeed confirm that there were 2 contacts. The first one was made on the 14th of June, and a heavy caliber hunting rifle, ammunition and poaching equipment were recovered. One suspect was fatally wounded and his accomplices managed to escape. The second incident took place on the 18th of June at night, where 3 suspects were fatally wounded and a heavy caliber hunting rifle, poaching equipment and ammunition were recovered.
The DA sought to clarify their decision to suspend newly sworn MP Ronaldo Gous. This comes as the Human Rights Commission files papers at the Equality Court regarding the alleged racial slurs made by him in a 2010 video circulating online. The DA says it has established that the video is genuine and not fake, as initially suspected. The DA's Richard Newton says it stands against everything that they stand for.
A question was posed to him, and he indicated that this video had been altered in some way. But of course, as soon as we found out that this was not the case, immediate action was taken. And of course, now there is a process that will follow, the disciplinary process, and everything will flow from there. We're getting a lot of questions about whether he will still be an MP or other issues involved, but he has now been totally prevented from doing any political party events, anything for or in the name of the party. And the Federal Legal Commission process is about to start.
4 Free State MECs have managed to make a comeback in the new provincial executive announced by Premier Makwin Letsohamatai, the Dipolele Mantate, Matabo Lito and Ketso Makume, as well as Saki Mokoena. Following her election in the Free State Legislature, the Premier's reappointed Mantle to continue leading the Public Works Department and moved Lito from Health to Social Development. Makume has been moved from COCTA to the newly restructured Department of Finance, Tourism and Economic Development. Mokoena has been moved from Agriculture to lead COCTA. Serbia is threatening to withdraw from the Men's European Football Championship unless UEFA, the Union of European Football Associations, punishes the teams whose fans chanted abuse targeting the Serbs. The BBC's Guy Delorney has more.
The Balkans conflicts of the 1990s are still playing out at Euro 24. When Croatia met Albania in Hamburg on Wednesday, the chant "Kill the Serb" rang around the stadium. Serbia's Football Federation said that was scandalous. It says it may withdraw from the competition if governing body UEFA doesn't act. It's a way of reminding the authorities that no fans have a monopoly on offensive behaviour. In fact, UEFA's shown little tolerance for ethnic conflict. It's fined Serbia and Albania for offensive flags and banned a Kosovo journalist who made an Albanian nationalist symbol in front of Serbian fans.
The top story, the Financial Sector Conduct Authority says it's identified more than 4,000 South African employers who've fallen behind in making contributions to employees' retirement funds. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khoos.
And coming up in your sports this hour, Box versus All Blacks blockbuster sold out and cheaper United parts ways with 16 players. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 southbound in Edenvale is slow moving towards Modderfontein Road. The N1 southbound in Fourways is slow moving towards Winnie Mandela Drive exit. The N1 northbound in Midrand is slow moving towards Samrand Road, and Eskampa Clearly Drive northbound in Pretoria has delays towards Moot Street. In KZN, the N3 westbound has a truck crash reported after Cliffdale exit. That road has been closed for recovery, so you're asked to expect heavy delays in that vicinity. And the N2 northbound has a crash reported after Spaghetti Junction. In Cape Town, the M5 southbound is slow moving towards Milner Road. The N1 outbound is slow moving towards Plattekloof Hill, and Batencraft Street outbound is slow moving towards the elevated freeway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation.
This year, we are celebrating Youth Month under the theme Actively Embracing the Socio-Economic Gains of Our Democracy. As we commemorate the massacre of school children during the Soweto Uprising of 1976, we also celebrate the liberation of our beloved country. Hashtag Freedom30. Hashtag Youth Month.
Hi, I'm Khomotso KG Mweketi, and I believe in music's ability to connect, to heal, to remind, and to bring joy. And each week on my Saturday and Sunday show Seasons right here on SAFM, I endeavor to do just that. So join the movement of Seasons every Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's addictive. You might invite a friend. Seasons, only on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide with me, KG Mweketi. Because where words fail, music speaks.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
I wonder what you would do if you were the DA regarding Ronaldo Khosa. I mean, I know he's been suspended. I know he's facing a disciplinary hearing. But I mean, beyond that, what would you do? Particularly based upon not just some pronouncements, but just the level and the depth of his pronouncements using, the K word and the N word and the other K as in kill, all of that. Yes, it may be a long time ago, but it is a big but, isn't it? He's now a member of Parliament. So what do you make of that? Right, as always, let's get talking. 0614 104 107. That's WhatsApp, text or voice notes to call in 086 000 2032. Now, to take that story of Ronaldo Khosa forward, earlier on, we had one comment, and you may have heard Sakina Kamweno chat to the DA earlier on, but let's bring in now Terry Oakley-Smith, who's a diversity specialist and the founder of Diversity with a T at the end. Terry, good chatting to you. Hi.
Hi, Ashraf. How are you?
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've chatted on any platform.
Exactly.
Well,
but rather sad that we're going to have to chat about this incident today.
I was just going to say, Ronaldo Khosa has brought us together. It's just quite ironic. So, earlier on, Sakina Kamwendo chatted to Richard Newton from the DA, and of course he explained his position, of the DA's position, regarding at that stage the suspension of Ronaldo Gous. This is what he said.
Question was posed to him, and he indicated that this video had been altered in some way. But of course, as soon as we found out that this was not the case, immediate action was taken. And of course, now there is a process that will follow, the disciplinary process, and everything will flow from there. You know, we're getting a lot of questions about whether he will still be an MP or other issues involved, but he is now being totally prevented from doing any political party events, anything for or in the name of the party. And the Federal Legal Commission process is about to start. But of course, the fact that he did not disclose this, when he joined the party, obviously that is something that would have excluded him immediately from the party. And then, of course, this is totally against any values, principles, and the way the party is run. You're bringing the party into disrepute. There's a whole number of charges. And of course, at the end of the day, I see that the South African Human Rights Commission is also now proceeding with hate speech charges. So I think there's a number of issues regarding party processes and party constitution contraventions that he has done.
All right, that's Richard Newton of the DA speaking to Sakina Kamwendo. Terry, what do you make of the DA's response?
I think it's too weak by far, Ashraf. I mean, to now be going through a disciplinary process when there are now 2 videos, as you know, not just one, and where the second one, where he uses this terrible hate speech, is proven to be authentic and not a fake post. I don't know why they don't just expel him. I mean, they're just coming into Parliament. They can't bring somebody into Parliament, even though he's suspended. You know, I think it's just too weak. I think the DA would do itself a favour by actually expelling Ronaldo Gous. And would do all of us a favour, in fact.
But look, I mean, they have suspended him. He's going to face a disciplinary hearing. Now,
yes,
it could well happen in the next couple of days or few hours, in fact. So it could well be that they either find him not guilty or not, right, or guilty. But you're saying, bottom line, at some stage now or whenever, he needs to be expelled.
Well, I'm saying not at some stage. I'm saying that if I were in the DA, I would want him to be expelled immediately. I don't think it's possible for him to be found not guilty when there's a video of him making these pronouncements. And I think it would have done the DA a great favour if they'd acted far more firmly on the issue. This is, after all, the second video, Ashraf.
Yes. I mean, we heard about the previous day, right? Should they have, acted much earlier? When I'm saying, 2 videos surface now, but if anybody's been following his, Twitter or X account over the years, right, you would certainly see the behavior of that person. Maybe not pronouncing to this level, but he certainly you wouldn't want to have someone like that associated with your party that wants to project itself as a non-racial party, and others perceive it as a very predominantly, white party for white people.
I think it indicates that the vetting process that the DA puts its candidates through was clearly insufficient, that's putting it mildly. And I think it must be a wake-up call to them that they should be very thoroughly vetting any candidates that they're going to take into their political party. I mean, it's not just a question of suspending him from Parliament. I would have thought it was a question of expelling him from the party, quite frankly. So I think the vetting needs to be a lot more rigorous. And maybe that's a wake-up call for all political parties. I mean, I wonder how rigorous the vetting is in all the parties.
I would think you're right. I think it's maybe a lot more looser than we think, and maybe that needs to change. Let's then talk about the broader issue of racism and the issues of transformation or the lack thereof, something I think you know much about, right? The fact that someone like this can make these type of pronouncements, even though it was 10 years ago or longer, and then still be seen as a citizen who effectively wants to represent you and I in Parliament as a member of Parliament. I mean, what does that say about our country?
Well, I think one of the things that it says, and I think that most people agree, is that we as white people got off far too lightly. After the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, there was no sense of impunity for us. There was no sense of our own responsibility for apartheid, and there was no redress. And I think, in a sense, that's given some white people the sense that they can more or less do as they like and say as they like. There isn't going to be any need for any kind of punishment.
So if there was
only recently, sorry, Ashraf, I was about to say that only recently has the bill been passed that deals with racism and racist speech, hate speech bill. I mean, it was sitting around for months and months, years, before it was passed. So until then, there was no way of actually finding redress for people who made these kind of comments.
And that alone is bizarre, considering that of all countries, this country was initially built on the basis of racism, right? That's the foundation of apartheid South Africa. You think that would be the first thing that we would be tackling, isn't it?
You would. And I mean, it was obviously pointed out in the Constitution. And I mean, racism shown to be one of the things that are anti-racism that we must value. And yet the previous government let this bill sit around. I think it was only passed just before the parliament was dissolved. So although people were racist and they were taken to court for racism, there was no actual bill against which they could be charged. And I think this was a grave mistake, in fact.
So you said that, and I'm quoting you, we as white people got off too lightly, no sense of impunity. What, two things. What should have been that impunity, before? And now that, as you said, you got off lightly, how should we then approach the issue of racism going forward?
Well, I think it's got to be tackled very seriously. And there have to be people, as the Human Rights Commission are now doing, are taking him to the Equality Court. And hopefully, if he's found guilty, he will have to serve a sentence. I mean, in the past, people have talked about, the penny sparrows of this world as, let them do community service. I don't think there's enough understanding in white people, and I'm including myself as a white person, of just the kind of pain that these kind of statements cause, the pain that racism causes. I hear all too often in my work, oh, but I didn't mean it. It isn't about what you meant. It's about how did you make me feel? And that's the critical difference, I think. So I think there needs to be much more speedy work when these kind of events occur. And I think even the fact that it happened in, I think it was 2016, do leopards change their spots, Ashraf? I have a feeling it's very difficult for a leopard to change its spots. It's very difficult. It demands a lot of work for a person with racist attitudes to really change. And when you look at his history, the history of his father even, you realize how deeply embedded these racist feelings must have been. And I don't think it was something that he accidentally found himself saying one day.
Is there room for any sympathy for him in terms of him being a victim of circumstances? Is brought up earlier by a caller who said, if he spoke about this 10 years ago, maybe he was provoked by the rise of political parties like the EFF, and according to that caller who said they were outrightly, openly racist, according to that caller. Do you think, therefore, there would be some sympathy for Ronaldo Gos's response at that time?
I really don't think so, Ashraf. I mean, I think at that time, we were long past 1994. We as white people had never really taken responsibility for the kind of racism and the whole apartheid state. We got off scot-free. We went on living our good lives, or our better lives, certainly. And we see the country gradually becoming more unequal, huge rise in the levels of unemployment. I certainly have no sympathy for Ronaldo Jose, and I can't see why we should. He must have known then. It wasn't a secret that racism was banned, that racism was regarded very seriously. Even back in 2016, what he may have known is there was no real punishment for it, but there is now.
Do I take it that you would agree that there's no way back for Ronaldo Jose?
I mean, I think that they should have not just suspended him, but expelled him immediately that this video was shown to be real. I can't understand how a political party could keep somebody in this new government in which many people have great hope with this kind of blot against his name.
Lastly, and to pick up on the name of your own company, diversity, how much more effort and attention needs to be put to understanding diversity and helping each other to live side by side in our diversity, but with utmost respect for one another's differences?
You know, I think a lot of work still needs to be done, Ashraf. If you look at the basic, as I was saying just now, just the basic inequality in this country, if you look at the very small percentage of black and white people that actually socialize, it's a tiny percent. So if we want to run the country together and govern together, we must find ways to reach out to each other and really to get to know each other. And so, you know, I think there's still an enormous amount of work to be done in this area. And it needs to be done not just, I think the private sector have tried and they're still continuing to pursue it. But all too often it's a sort of tick box. You know, come in and do one workshop and then, you know, we've done our bit. But to really change people's hearts and minds demands a lot of intense work. And we haven't really begun to do that kind of work.
In fact, I just saw something there's something coming up at the weekend aimed at children in terms of understanding racism and how to deal with issues of race and racism. And maybe that's more of that is necessary. Let's leave it at that. Terry Oakley-Smith, appreciate your input and your time. Certainly got us thinking about a range of issues, and maybe we'll get Ronaldo Jose thinking, if any. From Diversity, T, the founder there, Diversity. In fact, Terry Oakley-Smith will have a podcast of that conversation up pretty shortly as well. We often speak about innovation. Innovation for youth is just so paramount, particularly when there's such a high rate of unemployment among South Africa's youth. Let's talk to Pat Mashlangu right after this.
Get private banking levels of service from an Auto & General private advisor. This exclusive service is perfectly tailored for customers with more to cover but less time to spend covering it. If you have more than a car to insure and your combined cover is valued at over 1 million rand, you qualify for this personalised service. Enjoy after-hours assistance, proactive policy management and more when you apply at autogen.co.za. Auto & General. Never not there. A&G is a licensed non-life insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Lights. Camera. Scalpel. Every second counts, and every cut, every thought, every action is critical. Critical. Mondays to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 11 June. Channel your best drama with BBC Primetime. Only on S3. Open up.
SAFM Youth Month Takeover. SAFM invites young people between the ages of 18 to 35 to take over the airwaves this Youth Month. All you have to do is send a WhatsApp voice note or text message to 061 410 4107 or email info@safm.co.za. Tell us which show you'd like to co-host and what the two compelling issues facing our 30 years of democracy are, and we could be calling you. Terms and conditions apply.
Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
Richards Bay coach, Vusumuzi Vilagazi, 4-0 win. That's about as comprehensive as it could have been. So you must be delighted with the way things turned out.
Definitely. We are excited as a team. I'm happy for the boys and I'm happy for the team for retaining the status in the PSL. But we knew very well that it wasn't going to be an easy game, considering the fact that they were motivated by the fact that if they score 2 goals, they might also find themselves in the PSL. But I think what helped us most was our defensive structure in trying to make sure that they don't score. And I think our plan worked accordingly.
Top Sport on SAFM. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, so we're in the midst of Youth Month. Big attention on South Africa's youth, and particularly around 2 things, I would think: unemployment on the one hand, and the issues about innovation and entrepreneurship. So with that in mind, I think it's really great that we're chatting to Pat Mslangu, who's the founder and chief executive of Pat on Brands. Also hosts the Top 16 Yobas Youth on Brands Awards that comes up, the 3rd edition, I think, at the weekend, in fact. So Pat, good chatting to you. Hi.
Hi, Ashraf, and good evening to your listeners.
Good evening indeed. Right, so 2 things. Let me first start with this. We know the unemployment stats are horrific in the country. We know that. But you wrote a piece, and I think you published it on LinkedIn, in fact, called Youth Washing, right? Tell me about that.
Oh, yes. I wrote the piece around youth washing simply because of it's a practice that, in my observation, is starting to sort of take shape, and it's very undesirable. For those that do not know, youth washing is when corporates or governments, make claims about how they're empowering the youth, when in actual fact they are not. So it's similar to other concepts like greenwashing, where brands would make claims that their products are environmentally friendly when they actually know that that's not true. So, and as I titled that the article, youth washing won't solve our high employment crisis. We need to roll up our sleeves, and we need to do something about.
Okay, so what should besides rolling up the sleeves, practically, what should be done?
What should be done? Number 1, we need an intergenerational engagement. What that means is that if a youngster comes to you, Ashraf, today and asks for advice or mentorship, do you make the time for them? Or do you just say, I'm too busy, I've got too many shows to do and whatever? Or do you dismiss them? When a youngster approaches you with an idea, do you listen to it or look at it with an open mind? And from a point of view of wanting to help and making sure that this idea comes to life. And number 3, if you get a proposal from a youngster, do you also look at it in a manner in which you want that thing, that which they propose, it will be done? So what we are seeing with this concept, everybody talks about the youth, but very few people do something about it. And obviously, I also wrote it from the point of view of someone who runs a youth-owned business, someone who runs a youth program. And you can see the attitude towards young people. You can see ageism coming to play whenever they are dealing with youth.
Well, that moves on to the next point, which is your awards, right? Your youth-owned brand awards, right? And you have the 3rd one coming up this weekend. Why did you start it, and what impact has it had?
Yeah, we started the Youth on Brands Awards in 2022, and really, again, out of the need, to recognize the role that the young people play, in not only contributing to our economy, but to the overall image of South Africa. When we talk about the image of South Africa, globally, South Africa has sort of made its name, on the entertainment space, particularly with the Amapiano genre. Which is a genre that has started by young people. Every sort of revolution, you can even look at it globally. It's always young people that start. But seldom when they need to be recognized, or when there's the opportunities for recognition, young people are by the way, they're at the bottom of the barrel. So with these awards, we are focusing purely on youth-owned and run brands. And the impact has been, so great. And it's even hard to measure, because what we are doing, outside of giving them a physical trophy, I chat with many of the previous winners, even some of the nominees for this year. And the word that comes out every year is that it's reaffirming that which they are working on is valid. And once you can give a young person confidence in themselves, in that which they can do, they can be anything they want to be.
And also in terms of the branding, I certainly talk about building champions all the time. By giving them awards, and it's not as, I've had the privilege of being attended the previous one, so I know what I'm talking about here. It's a high-end event, right? And suddenly many of these people are catapulted onto a national and, hopefully a continental and international stage just by virtue of your awards. That sort of affirmation and acknowledgement, I take it that for you is critically important, isn't it?
Absolutely. And what we are seeing, because now we're doing it for the third year, what we saw this year that we didn't see in the past 2 years, is that media drive that you're talking about, that the PR that they benefit, it starts before they even win. Most of them say to us, just by virtue of us being nominated for this thing, it's enough to reaffirm us. And already, like I say, most of them have been on many SABC radio stations just by virtue of them being nominated for the awards.
Okay.
So from a reputation, credibility perspective of their brand, it's really counterparting them.
Well, there are lots to consider. Pat Mashlangu, thanks for your time. I understand the event is on Saturday, in Sandton. Feel free to get your organization, the Top 16 Yobas, to tweet and tag me and SFM Radio as well, so we can share that with information for people who are still interested in attending. I think they'll come back very, very inspired indeed. Pat, thanks for your time. Much appreciated. Pat Mashlangu, the founder, chief executive of Pat on Brands, or as he says, Pats. I think that's what we know. So, Top 16 Yobas, YOBA, that's Youth Owned Brand Awards. I think you should be impressed. Let's get the news headlines now. It's 5:30 with Greg.
A look at the headlines. Transnet says it intends to appeal a judgment handed down by the High Court to pay over 6 billion rand in damages to Sasol. The Financial Sector Conduct Authority says it has identified more than 4,000 employers who have fallen behind in making contributions to employees' retirement funds. And the Free State Premier says her newly appointed provincial cabinet will foster ethical government and will not tolerate corruption. A full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, in central Johannesburg, the M1 southbound is slow moving towards Crown Interchange, and the M2 eastbound is slow moving near Risick Street exit. The N3 southbound in Edenville is queuing towards Modderfontein Road. The N1 northbound in Centurion has a crash after John Foster Drive. The N1 southbound in Fourways queuing towards Winnie Mandela Drive. Hans Schoeman Street westbound in Bromhof is slow moving at Rabi Street. The N1 northbound in Midrand is slow moving towards Samrand Road, and Eskom Batleli Drive northbound in Pretoria has delays towards Mood Street. In KZN, the N3 westbound, that truck crash after Cliffdale exit has led to the road being closed for recovery, so expect heavy delays. The N2 northbound has a crash after Spaghetti Junction. The M7 westbound is slow moving towards Bellville Road exit, and the N2 southbound in Belito had a serious crash reported after Belito exit. The road has been blocked, causing some heavy delays. In Cape Town, the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound is slow moving through Hospital Bend. The N1 outbound is slow moving towards Plattekloof. The N7 Jakes Hadwell Drive southbound is slow moving towards Voortrekker Road, and the N1 outbound has a crash reported at the R300 interchange. All lanes are open. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
And as always, to me is our Minister of Sport. What's up?
Well, starting off with rugby this hour, tickets to the much-anticipated clash between the world champion Springboks and New Zealand at Cape Town Stadium in September is officially sold out. The Boks will host the All Blacks in the Rugby Championship on the 31st of August at Ellis Park before a 7th of September blockbuster in Cape Town in a rematch of the 2023 Rugby World Cup final. Rassie Erasmus Chargers kick off their 2024 season against Wales at Twickenham on Saturday. Then in football, Chippa United have parted ways with 16 players, including Luvuyo Memela and Kamohelo Mahlatsi. The Chili Boys had a mixed season, and while it looked like they would make the top 8 cut, they finished in the 12th position. Meanwhile, Goodman Mosele and Maleboho Mudise returned to Orlando Pirates and Mamelodi Sundowns, respectively. Meanwhile, Austria's coach Ralf Rangnick says that they expect Poland striker Robert Lewandowski to start in tomorrow's game, with both sides hungry for victory after losing their opening matches. He says he will not make any changes to accommodate him. Although Poland's record goal scorer missed the 2-1 defeat by the Dutch due to an injury picked up in a friendly against Turkey, Rangnick says that they are very convinced that he will be back in action tomorrow. But in terms of the action to look forward to today, Denmark face England at 6 p.m. and then a mouth-watering clash between Spain and Italy at 9 p.m. Still staying with football, CAF head of Communication, Lux September, says that they are set to announce the dates for the men and women's Africa Cup of Nations tournament on Friday. September says that the football calendar will feature strongly on the agenda items for the meeting that will be held on Friday. The usual July and August period has been taken this year by the Olympic Games in Paris. Then finally, the Comrades Association is currently investigating allegations of cheating at the marathon. According to a statement sent out, their office received tip-offs of suspected cheating during the race, and also regarding the submission of fraudulent qualifying information. No athletes have been identified as yet, but race and operations manager Anne Ashworth says that CMA is hoping to conclude the investigations in the next few days, after which names will be handed over to the KZN Athletics for disciplinary action. With that said, it is a wrap from my side.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Tell you what, later on we'll be chatting about what goes into potentially for the president and in consultation into putting together a cabinet, South Africa's executive. That comes up later on. Let's talk business for now, as always, with the MoneyWeb market update. Jimmy, hi Jimmy.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. How are you?
Yeah, good indeed. Right, what's big on your show today, or now and later?
Well, we're going to be taking a look at some of the developments that have come out. You would have heard that Greg Hoos, in his news update, announced that Transnet is liable for some money towards Sasol, but they are also liable towards the other Natref partner, or the partner in the Natref refinery in the form of Total Energies. So it looks as though they're on the hook for just north of 8 billion rand. 6 billion would go to Sasol, at least 2.1 billion would go to Total. They're obviously going to take this up on appeal, and I suspect it might be because the balance sheet might not be able to take a 10 billion rand hit, but we'll dig into that and try and unpack how we got to this amount and what we do from here. Then we've got a conversation with Hendrik de Tooy, founder and CEO at 91, one of the largest asset managers in the country, just around what's been happening at the moment with everything around the Government of National Unity, what it means for foreign direct investment, for the asset management space as well, and how we sort of move forward, given that today wasn't such a good day on the markets, and we are looking to see whether or not the joy that we saw in the markets would be short-lived, or if it's just a bit of a reprieve before a continuation of the rally. Then we've got a conversation with the guys at EOS Capital in Namibia. There's a very interesting Namibia spaceport project that's getting off the ground. It's an infrastructure project in the ICT space aimed at improving connectivity in Namibia, but also in neighboring countries like South Africa and Botswana. So we're going to speak to the guys at EOS Capital that have been financing this deal to see how it is going to impact the lives of the infrastructure system or the ecosystem in Namibia and potentially in South Africa and SADC. And then because it's Thursday, we've got our SME feature, and I've got a company by the name of Loop today. They found a very interesting way to assist taxi owners and other business owners in collecting cash payments for their services without necessarily having to incur the delays that come with that. So very interesting model that they're running from a business perspective. I'm interested to see how they have all of this sorted out, and we're going to be speaking to them as part of our SME feature of the week. But before we get to that, as I said, markets have been moving in an interesting fashion today, not as positive as they have been throughout the week. First day of bearish movements in terms of the last 3 days, so we couldn't sustain the momentum that we saw on Tuesday and Wednesday. And if we have a look at the all shares, down about 0.8%, with the top 40 down about 0.75%, industrials down 1.3%, financial stocks down 1.6%, and resources surprisingly holding their ground. They were up 1.4%. The rand didn't have such a good day, down about 0.5% against the dollar, back above 18 rand, sitting at 18 rand 6 cents, at about 22.89 against the British pound, and 19 rand 36 against the euro, losing about 0.25% there. It's back above 12 rand against the Australian dollar as well, losing 0.33% there. And if we look at some of the international equity markets, the markets in Asia were a bit of a mixed bag once again. It seems this is a theme with them, with Tokyo finishing in the green, Sydney finishing marginally in the green, but Hong Kong and mainland China both finishing 0.5% in the red in each case there. If we look at European markets, rather, the CAC in France was up 1.3%, DAX in Germany up almost 1%, and the FTSE in London, that was up 0.75% at 0.75%. US markets yesterday were not trading for Juneteenth, are back in trade, and they are in the green. It seems they are responding positively to having had a bit of a break there, with the S&P up 0.1%, the Dow up 0.5%, and NASDAQ basically flat at this point. Some of the commodities movements, the gold price having a good day off of the back of geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, shooting up to $2,354 an ounce there, up about 1.3%. Brent crude also holding quite steady, $85.86 a barrel, up about 0.6% at the stage, with platinum and palladium prices still below $1,000 an ounce in each case. They're $984.55 an ounce on platinum and $921 on palladium. So lots to dig into when we come back a little later on. I want to take a look at the developments in the Middle East. They are having an effect on just the macro outlook that we're seeing in the markets, and they are creating a bit of concern around where people are putting their assets. There seems to be a bit of a flight towards somewhat of a safe haven. The dollar still strengthening off the back of, or despite having weaker currency and retail data that came out early in the week. So we've got quite a bit to unpack when we come back a little later on, but we will do that when we come back. For now, Ashraf, back to you and the team.
Perfect, and I'll leave it to you two when you come back. Thanks for that, Jimmy. Right, let's get your calls. By the way, we're going to chat pretty shortly. We're going to get an analysis in terms of understanding what goes into the appointment of the cabinet and who's likely to be in the cabinet. Guess you never know, right? But let's get some calls first. Sydney in Arkan. Hope I got that right. Hello, Sydney.
Hi, Brother Ashraf. It's me, Sydney, the level in Arkan, Pushpakari.
Yeah, good talking to you. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, brother. Brother Ashraf, I'm a registered member in the data of ANC, and I'm a voter of ANC. I appreciate the GNU now taking South Africans forward. This is the vehicle we all need as South Africans. A few days ago, I even said it's nice, so beautiful, pretty to live in a multi-race country like South Africa, and how blessed we are on this continent that you would find white, colored, Indians, blacks and so on. How great, how beautiful that is. We don't have anything better now. If the GNU is the best weekend, those who doesn't understand this, I don't know. But let's move forward. The much-awaited cabinet should reflect the people living in South Africa. It shouldn't be too black or too white or too Indian. It should tell even a person in the Southeast Asia, when it looks at the cabinet of South Africa, then understand what the people will find in there. It should be just that multiracial. I've been longing to see this in many years, and then I appreciate.
Okay, you got that. You're certainly very supportive of the position, and I think no matter who we support and which parties we support or follow, I think it is in our interest that that government that's been formed now does work, because it must work for the majority. Sydney, thanks for that call. Let's get to Klebecha on the line. Klebecha, rather. Mzondile is there. Hi.
Yeah, Ashraf, I've got 2 points. This is in response to Mr. Nduli.
Okay.
Two things. The first one, Ashraf, you've got to give it to the ANC. This is their finest hour, and I'll tell you why.
Their finest hour? Okay, I'm listening.
Yeah, they've been able to take a defeat and make it a victory. And let me explain that in my second point. Up until thus far, majority of South Africans, especially white South Africans, had assumed that the DA, in a way, is going to be in control of government and the GNU. And we are now seeing that is not happening. Instead, they are likely going to be faded away slowly. And that is going to allow the ANC to recoup and also to consolidate with those who are similar with it in ideology. So in reality, I think the turnout of the anticipation or the expectation of the DA is being proven that that is not going to become the case. So I'm saying maybe in 2019, Ashraf, we might find a situation where the ANC is in a much stronger position than it is. And instead, it would have used the DA instead of the DA thinking it's going to be using the ANC. That is what we are seeing unfold.
Okay, I hear you, but you see, the only question I have for you is like, you're saying it's their finest moment. It may well be if we reflect in 5 years' time. At this point in time, they're speaking from a position of defeat, firstly, in terms of dropping down to 40%. Now, I hear what you're saying. If the ANC comes out of this very strongly and the GNU holds and service delivery improves, it could well be. And if all the decisions made as per the conversation I had with the chief whip, then maybe the ANC will come out strongly. But we can't even measure. We're like 5 minutes into a 90-minute game, if you get my point. Let's wait for the full 90 minutes. We'll see what happens. Thanks for that call. By the way, I think in terms of the chief whip, and others have commented as well, I'm talking about Ntuli, right? I think he does come across with a lot of clarity. There's a lack of emotion, but there's a lot of logical clarity. And I've heard him on other interviews, including the one we did today. Listen to the podcast if you don't know what I'm talking about. And I think that does augur well for the way the ANC communicates itself to the public. And that's what we want from all communicators, right? Well, third, let's get another call. Salo in Mokopane. Hi, Salo.
Ashraf, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, man. Go ahead.
And when we're trying to maneuver our lives in this so-called GNU, we'll see GNU, we'll see how it's going to hold us economically and otherwise. Ashraf, sometimes I'm just chuckling when we listen to some comments. I'm referring to, I think it was a caller, Manja. We can't say racist white people who are just coming up, and then we say it has been provoked by other people like the EFF. I think it's wrong. We had a guy who insulted President Ramaphosa 2018. Mm-hmm. I think Kasim Naye, something like that, Ashraf. And then can we say, did the president at that time said something or to provoke this guy? No, absolutely not. The guy just took his phone, went on social media and insulted the president. That's been racist. There was no provocation of some sort, and it is just like that. The same way with this guy who the DA who has been maybe suspended by the DA. It has just been racist. No one provoked anyone here. And if indeed it was coming from, in brackets, the EFF, the guy should have responded to the EFF if indeed his anger came from that. So we cannot generalize to say, or as a fact, and to say that guy maybe has been provoked by the EFF. I mean,
yeah, okay. I think you've made your point, and I think you're right. You know, even if the EFF said certain things, that doesn't mean you can get to this level of saying the things that you've said. I mean, honestly, I agree with you totally. All right, Solo, thanks for that call. from Mokopane. Let's get another. I think we have another call. We've got Percy in Limpopo. We are crisscrossing the country. Hello, Percy.
No, thanks very much, Ashraf. I think I want to make contribution in relation to the differences that are there in relation to statement of intent.
Okay.
What needs to be done is that the application and the interpretation will always differ from time to time, considering the material conditions, but the two parties must ensure that they are able to understand whatever is documented so that whatever they communicate to the public becomes something that will be palatable, that will not be able to tear the country apart. And therefore it's important that what the Chief Whip of the African National Congress today related publicly with what Helen Zille said should be able to be understood in the context that perhaps there was a misunderstanding in relation to the statement of intent, and therefore that area needs to be tightened so that we are able to move the country forward without any misunderstanding.
Okay, got that. Thank you. Well, I think you're right. The question is, was there a misunderstanding, or is that the type of power plays that takes place in public spaces? I mean, the media is one of them, right? So is it that or is it the other? Either way, I think the ANC position is pretty clear. Now, if that changes, then there's something wrong. And we'll see about it, because he was very clear that the president has the prerogative to appoint the cabinet, which has always been the case. And in this case now, the shift is he can consult the other members of the Government of National Unity, but he certainly doesn't have to take instructions from them. He can consult like he can consult me. It's like, give me your advice, but what do you think? But ultimately, the call would be his, according to the ANC. Whether the DA and the other parties think differently, well, we will certainly find out shortly, isn't it? Right, let's talk about the cabinet. We'll do that in a moment.
SAFM Youth Month Takeover. SAFM invites young people between the ages of 18 to 35 to take over the airwaves this Youth Month. All you have to do is send a WhatsApp voice note or text message to 061 410 4107 or email info@safm.co.za. Tell us which show you'd like to co-host and what the two compelling issues facing our 30 years of democracy are, and we could be calling you. Terms and conditions apply. You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, we're going to wrap up the show. Maybe we'll take some calls at the back end if we can. But let's talk about the cabinet. Not so much who, but the how, right? Dr. Ongama Mtinka is with me as a political analyst. Appreciate your time. You're live with the National Pulse. Hello.
Good evening to you, Ashraf, and your listeners.
Thank you so much. Right, so, we got you here to maybe give us an insight into the type of, if I can call it conundrums or questions that the president will be dabbling with, not in terms of names, but in terms of procedure and process before he names his cabinet.
So I started a process of just outlining what the broad principles that I'd like to see, and in fact that are possibly dictated by the times. I think there are about four things that come to mind to me. One, obviously, it's about unleashing the potential of government to perform, and that talks about competency and inspiration. The second one, for me, it's unity as much wider than the GNU. President Cyril Ramaphosa is in a very unique position of being able to choose a cabinet that can force greater unity, not just as the zero-sum politics that being in or out of the GNU may imply. And I was arguing the point that the GNU should not apportion to itself what the ANC did not even attempt to do. So it's always drawn from even opposition benches. So likewise, I think that the GNU shouldn't be limiting the president. The majority of the people should be coming from it, but I think he should cast his eyes much wider than that.
So I'm looking at the practicalities of it all. I mean, let's just stay with that for the moment. Up to now, there's been like 28 people in cabinet and deputies, but let's say we stick around 20, because there's been talk about reduction, okay? The problem is he's got to satisfy, first of all, the parties that form part of the GNU first, I would think, right? And that means, by rough numbers, it could be as percentages roughly, 55, 60% from the ANC, and then half that from the DA, which leaves you 1 or 2 seats with the other 1 or 2 parties that are left. Where does he then have time to go outside the GNU?
It's a matter of political survival, as far as I'm concerned, to actually cast his eyes much wider. And generally, I mean, if we've seen ANC presidents in previous times, including himself, those would be just a portfolio or 2 that get drawn from outside the mainstream governing coalition or governing party.
So when you say cast the net wider, you mean cast the net wider outside of the arrangement, the GNU arrangement, but other political parties, or you're saying cast the net wider outside of Parliament? Because I think at least two people can be taken from outside of Parliament as well, isn't it? It's been done before.
Yeah, it's mainly among parliamentarians that I was thinking about. And then if there is pressure to change the finance ministry, and I mean internal pressure, such as, for example, the current minister not being willing to come back, then they could, pull somebody from outside, even parliament for that. We've seen former governors, former treasury executives, transitioning there quite nicely. Also, though, part of what I was thinking about the finance ministry is that even if the minister didn't want to continue, I suspect that he would be persuaded to stay, so that the cabinet doesn't become about too many things at once. So for now, it's about political transition, and I think that if something is going to happen with finance, maybe the president might want to actually have a transitional arrangement in terms of which the current minister stays, and with a view that 8 months from now, if need arises, he makes that change. I don't think he would want to, proceed with it at a time when there's a lot that's at stake.
Okay, so let's ignore those that are part of the GNU arrangement at the moment, because there's so many of them. But if you had to go outside and take your advice, which names from which parties would you bring in?
I want to resist that temptation. It's such a strong urge to want to do it, but let me resist it for now.
Okay. What about, let's move on then to the power of these political heads for different ministries. Let me clear my throat. So, whether it's the Minister of Finance or International Relations or Education, and I can go all the way down, what powers do these ministers have to establish policy and the practical implementation, considering that it's very likely that their own parties may differ from that?
Sure. So I'll jump finance because we've still talked about it. But I think that what's important to say about finance is that it's a de facto prime ministerial role because of the constitutional powers to look after everybody else as far as the fiscus is concerned. Then the next one becomes foreign affairs. And I don't think that's a general issue, but I think the politics of the current coalition are going to make to be quite an interesting ministry. I think the ANC will want to retain that, even if there's a compromise that says have a minister but bring a different deputy minister. And the other one would be energy. Energy, I think, is going to be a big joystick there. The DA put a mineral rights reform among some of its key priorities. So I suspect that they will want to be involved there. Again, it might just be a compromise of you get the minister, we get the deputy. What I thought was quite creative was to aim for the a minister in the presidency role for John Steenhuisen. I thought this was an interesting gambit on the part of the DA. They are going for a portfolio that is senior enough that that I think actually they could get if they are to be respected as a coalition partner that is senior of the coalition partners, but without triggering much political drama, like going for the deputy presidency. So I think an office in the presidency would be an interesting role, and I think that the president could actually rope in another party in that presidency if he wanted to create a troika among these GNU political parties. The last issue for me, Ashraf, depending on time, is I think that we need South African politics to be unleashed, and that unleashing would be a very bold transition away from liberation fighter politics. I think these guys have been there for such a long time, and we can do with leaders whose sense of purpose and internal, or who see themselves more from appreciating the strides that they've made in leadership in the democratic period, rather than.
And what's your example of unleashed as opposed to going back to the historical positions that we've had?
It would be leaders in their 40s who've gained some significant experience in government. So more of the Ronald Lamolas who have now established their names. But can we get more names? I don't. So I resisted the urge to mention names before. But the name Siviwe Kwagube excites me. In terms of politicians who've gained significant traction in parliament. If the president was going to gambit with new names in the cabinet, I'd say give that people like that some roles. You've got, I think, the Nombendulo Mkachwas. There's a lot of people who've gained some traction politically who could be tried even as deputy ministers. South Africa needs to be a lot more intentional about creating a critical mass of leaders, and the ANC needs it a lot more, Ashraf, because they are so trapped into fights, old fights from the early 90s among these leaders, that those are so debilitating and are not focused on organization building types of appointments.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Thank you for your time. I think it's a good way to end in terms of saying that the ANC being in the position that it is now, and then having dropped to 40%, and then forming or spearheading the government of national unity as they talk about, they now need to also move on in terms of the type of leadership they're going to have within their cabinet. And your point about people with energy and vigor, clear break away from so much of what has defined them in the past, that time clearly would be now. So thanks for your time, Dr. Ongama Mtinka, who was a political analyst. And that's the show. Thanks to the team that makes it all up. Thanks to you guys who listen, who call in, who tweet, who comment. Your support is absolutely appreciated. You effectively move the National Pulse every single day. But as far as the team is concerned, thanks to Patrick and Tumi and to Boko and Vusani, as well as Temba and the team, of course, and Greg, of course, who's just reading the news now. So we go back to him at 6 o'clock. Time for the news.